Take it back from the top and we'll give the public another shot at commenting. George.
Okay, it being 7:02, I'll open the Wednesday, January 15th meeting of the Finance Committee. Do we have any public comment? And second time. First order of business then is the approval of minutes. I'll accept the motion. We all have a chance to read them, look at them. Take a motion from.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Town Administrator's recommendation on the FY25 capital plan.
There's no presentation. Just
Okay.
the straight
On the
information.
capital plan, we just want to go
Yeah.
through it?
Yeah, through Mr. Chairman, so I'll go through it real quick. Obviously, I hope everybody's had a chance to read through the memo. For those of you who are new, we try to make it as easy as possible for everyone to understand. Happy to answer any questions, obviously, at the end. So the memo goes right in order. We try to make it 4 or 5 pages so everyone can kind of flow through it easily. At the top, we lay out a quick chart. We have just for background, so folks at home or others that are new, for at least 20 to 25 years, the budget situation in Franklin has always been in a place where our free cash certification has been used or it's been town policy to use the free cash certification each year for the capital program. I'm well aware that other towns might do things a little differently. Some towns use free cash to plug their budget gaps. Some towns use free cash for other services. But this has been a program and a policy the town's had for a couple decades. It's worked really well. And what we try to do is lay out for everybody what the free cash total is. And then we have some other policy adjustments on that opening table. I would note that we have 4.5 million in free cash total. Just to remind everybody, what makes up free cash is unspent money from only the municipal budget and throughout the fiscal year, and then also unanticipated revenues that we did not see coming. Those could be in a variety of formats. Several years ago, there was cannabis money that came into that, but that was a one-time revenue source. Building permits might go into that. Monies that departments brought in more revenue than what they anticipated. Just to give a few examples, I know we've done free cash presentations in the past, but just so that everybody is on the same page. So we have 4.5 million in the pot this year. As everybody can see in the chart, we have a series of town policies. I would note for the second year in a row, we are not fully funding the OPEB policy. Last year, we took that money completely out to pay for the one-time monies for the budget deficit. This year, we were able to put in about 53,850. That is not 10% of free cash. That is not a typo. But as you will see down page, the competing demands for this revenue and this money are quite significant. And notably, the redistricting costs are certainly a big piece of that. The second link in the packet on the agenda is the 5 and 10-year capital plans for the departments that have vehicles, facilities, fleets, one-time revenues. If you just go in and look at those sheets, you'll see that obviously there's a lot of need in town, and there's a lot of projects coming up. We have most of our vehicles are on a pretty specific schedule, as we've heard many years before from the fire chief, DPW director, and the police chief. But what we do want to try to maintain our commitments is to the fire truck stabilization fund, certainly the field stabilization fund, and the property acquisition fund. Obviously of note in here is $1 million to the budget stabilization fund. This is being recommended by me because this was the compromise that was made in June last year when we were after the failed override. There was a compromise at the council level to take $1 million out of the rainy day fund to help patch the budget gap, with the contingency that this year in free cash we would also invest that $1 million back in. So that recommendation I'm bringing full circle. I will say for a couple years now, I think I've made mention that I thought free cash would continue to dip. But I think, as you'll see during the budget debate later on in another few weeks, at least on the municipal side, local receipts are strong. We are past the pandemic, for sure. We have certainly rebounded since the pandemic with all the revenue loss for those few years, which is really, really good news. And so we have $4.5 million to distribute. After all those policy adjustments, we have just a sliver under $3 million left, which is calculated throughout the rest of the memo. So the first page, Mr. Chairman, just quickly, is those same recommendations I just made. And then the third page of the memo is the general fund department requests. First on the list is, I'm just going to rattle through them quick so you guys can just ask questions. All the department heads are here. Folks have questions. I hope most of this is fairly self-explanatory. We try to write it out as clear as can be. But we're proposing 1.185 to the schools for 2 replacement sped vans, $190,000 for the traffic design up at the Keller Sullivan Rotary, which is for the redistricting, for the change in the site plan up there for the traffic, for the bus drop-off, excuse me. We are proposing $150,000 for security improvements at the Franklin Middle School, which is currently Horace Mann. The moving services for the reorganization are estimated at about $340,000. I will note that the municipal building just had the same vendor, and we spent roughly 75% of what the estimate was. This building was much easier to move than schools. But we do think that is the cost that we've been quoted is what the maximum price would be to do the redistricting move from Parmenter and Kennedy.
Can I ask a Sorry.
Can we just,
Sorry, yep.
let's just,
Yep, go ahead.
and then 100,000, their schools have been asking for 200,000 as a general fund for a variety of tasks that are gonna need to go on throughout the redistricting. Unfortunately, we're only able to fund 100,000 of that right now, but I think if we do a fantastic job coordinating the move, there should still be surplus funds in that move cost that should be allocated to some of the other projects that the schools have there. So what I'm asking of them, and I'm asking of the school district, and certainly all of the employees, is to listen to the movers, do what they ask you to do, don't go rogue, literally do what they ask you to do, and that cost of $340,000 will not be that expensive. That is a really, really important thing, because as you'll know from both this plan, but also the other redistricting costs down the line, we need to save every dollar we can as judiciously as possible for that. And I do believe that if we pay attention to the movers and follow their plans, like we did in the municipal building, there'll be extra money in that account that we will then be able to apply to the Phase 1 school facility projects. Obviously on here, there's a few examples of moving the touch views, some of the work that has to be done in the labs. We're gonna be doing painting at Keller Sullivan. While everything's off the wall, we're gonna bring in a fresh coat of paint and some other common area projects. And so those are the vast majority of the redistricting costs that the superintendent needs right now. And then finally, for the schools, we're proposing $250,000 to hire the owner's project manager, which is required by statute for the for the design and architectural services for the remodel of the Remington Jefferson School. So I'll take a pause there, and maybe if you want, Mr. Chairman, we can get questions out of the way on the redistricting and for the school-related costs, and then we'll move on to the next departments.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I'd like to give people the opportunity to go item for item, look at it, and ask a question if it comes up. I have one or two questions on policy requests, and I know we're not gonna change them tonight, but, for instance, the fire truck stabilization, truck now costs $1 million, pump it $900,000. I don't know that $100,000 is enough. I'd leave that to the recommendation of the chief. I just put that out there.
Yep.
The second one, property acquisition, $200,000.
Yep.
Can you expound upon what property acquisition, other than the police station, I understand that.
Yep. Yep.
What
So-
else would we be buying?
Right, so at some point, there's likely gonna be a right of first refusal on a north side. There's a right of first refusal on the VFW property up on the north side of town for lack of a better term, for a substation, possibly for fire, for response times. We have also, and I can't discuss it completely because these are executive session materials, but we have also been offered and also want to be in a position that if a piece of property for municipal or school purposes came available, we have to be ready. And then obviously you just spoke of the police station. There's going to be an evaluation this spring regarding the sites of Davis Thayer and Parmenter. But I also am well aware there are a lot of citizens that are not happy about either of those choices. And so if either of those don't work out, we're going to have to buy another piece of property. I don't know where that is. The consultants will do a full evaluation of site possibilities. But when you have no money in the bank, your only then option is to borrow, and at a 4%, 7% rate that's going on right now, and I don't see interest rates dropping in the next year very significantly, we have to have some sort of cash down payment if the town's going to be in a position to have to buy a piece of property for any other municipal use. This is something we've never done in Franklin. We just started this acquisition fund a couple years ago, and we've just been trying to store away a little bit of money to be in a position where if those uses have to come up, we at least have some cash flow to offset borrowing costs or to be able to put a down payment on a piece of property.
I thought our borrowing costs were less than that.
Well, not right now.
Oh,
I mean, we haven't gone out to borrow for a couple years.
right.
So I think the last one was Schmidt Farm, and that was before a lot of the rate hikes. And I just think the market, I mean, you know as well as anybody, Mike, I'm just not sure what that's going to show. I mean, I listen to the Fed Reserve Chairman as much as everybody else. If I could guess what's going to happen, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be on Wall Street. But you know, I think we all know that it's a volatile place. And also, that could be. I'm hoping those go down, but we just want to be in a position to obviously have some sort of cash flow on those issues moving forward.
Lauren, did you have something?
I think you kind of answered my question. I'm sorry that I
It's
interrupted.
okay.
My question was, out of the commitment to the schools, if they come under on the sped vans, if security ends up costing less,
Yep.
does that money stays with the school or does it go back to free cash?
Yep. No, it stays with them. All excess funds under any of these capital accounts are spent under my signature. So I've never rejected in my 10 years here a request where the schools had surplus, even if it's $1,000. I've never rejected a request for them to reallocate those monies, but that stays with them. And I think most of these numbers too, Lauren, are based off quotes. There is a packet of like 100 pages somewhere linked in here with all of the quotes. That sped van is dead on. The beta traffic design is a direct quote. The security improvements are a direct quote. Really, the one that's probably got the most flexibility is the moving services.
Just one question on the moving services cost that you mentioned. You mentioned that that the 340 is probably going to be sufficient
Yep.
as long as the school and the teachers and whatnot, like they adhere to that, or adhere to the instructions of the movers. Is there a concern that they wouldn't? Is there a reason? Okay, it's just more like.
It's just a
let
lot,
me
it's just a
know.
lot.
Just a lot going on.
Just the quantity in general is just a lot.
Yeah, understand.
And, you know, and so it's just complicated, so.
Okay, just more like, okay, but, you know, following guideline, not an actual concern that
No,
they're going to.
not at all.
Go rogue.
Nope, nope.
Anybody else?
a couple questions. So this is fiscal year that ended 6/30/24, right? I know it says certified on 7/1, so it's fiscal year that ended, the operating from 7/1/23 to 6/30/24,
Yes.
okay.
And then it
Just-
gets certified in about October, November in the fall.
Gotcha, okay, and then we're currently in the sped. Okay, so that was one thing, and then I know I asked for this last year and I got it and I loved it, I think Karen put it together for me, which was just the summation of kind of how we got to the free cash by category, and then just with comparison to previous years. Okay.
It's later on, it's downstream in the agenda.
Okay,
So it's later on, it's under the standing updates.
it is, okay.
Yep.
Got it, thank you.
Yep.
That was it.
Anybody else?
I have a question.
Got
What was the stabilization fund balance prior to the $1 million?
It was 3 million.
It was-
Maybe, like, roughly, it was like right around 3 million.
And it's at 3.2 right now.
It's at 2.2.
You want, oh, all right, so it was at 3 million minus the one, and then I want to bring it up. All right, sorry, I had to think through that. George, I had a lot of the similar questions too, with the property acquisition and, or there's something else too, but, I also don't think 410 grand is gonna get you much, even the VFW property on Pond Street, I don't. See how you-
Where are you?
If it currently has 210 in it, and then we put another 200 in it, right? So we'll bring it to
The
410.
property acquisition.
Is there, I understand that you had mentioned that there's no wiggle room in any of these policy requests, but is there, why is that?
I'm not sure,
Are we able to discuss changing some of these numbers?
you could recommend them.
Yeah. I just think, we haven't even gotten to some of the other departments yet either, so maybe once we read through it all, but I think that, I don't know, if there's an immediate need for some money, somebody needs it, and we're just looking to put it into savings instead for potential use in the future, I'm a bigger fan of giving it now if you need it.
Sure.
But I get the point of a savings account. I understand that. The stabilization accounts, I do understand that. I just think it's maybe not the time right now.
Sure.
It might be the time. And we can discuss, of course, but I'm just saying,
I have a question on
That's my-
that.
yeah.
Who can move the money out of stabilization? Out of stabilization accounts, I think I know the answer, but council can move it if they so choose.
The council can expend it if they so choose.
Right.
They can't move it from another account to another account. So it takes a 2/3 legal vote. 6 out of 9 members have to go to expend it. So they can't move it after that.
Move it from,
Like you're saying, move it
budget
from
savings,
recreation
not
to.
budget.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a hot one. Property acquisition to police department expenses, for whatever reason.
I would just note that, other than the DPW, the police and fire, we fully funded their requests. We fully funded the big requests for the DPW, obviously water and enterprise, and those are separate accounts. So we've done pretty good job funding the things that we need. The idea about savings, I mean, sure, I mean, we may never agree on that. But based on some of the issues that I can't really fully speak about just because of executive session, and I can't publicly really discuss land acquisition issues legally, I can just tell you at some point, you don't want to be caught without anything. And I guess I would just have to understand exactly what void we're filling as to why we wouldn't do that. Those projects come up fairly quick, just like CPA. Fortunately, we have community preservation, which allowed us to purchase the open space. But really, community preservation can only really be spent for those purposes. It really can't be spent for any other municipal purpose. So, to your point, Heather, and I will admit, there's nothing tomorrow that I'm looking at, necessarily purchasing. I will say that I have concerns, obviously, about the police station debate, just because there are small groups of people that are extraordinarily passionate about this issue, and they're determined to build the police station in certain places. And I can also see that there's some people that are going to work against certain sites. And if we had to buy a piece of land, we'd have to go out and borrow that money at a high interest rate, and that would be a huge impact on the budget. That would take up a huge piece of the operating budget pie. Unless we went out for a debt exclusion for both the building cost as well as the purchasing of the piece of property. 10 years ago when I got here, there was property available that would have been maybe more suitable or not more suitable, but could have been suitable for a police station. But I can tell you in the last decade, those areas of where a location would be are very scarce in all likelihood. And the idea that when the public knows a municipality is looking for a piece of land, the price doesn't drop. The price goes up.
Right, but to your point, you could do a debt exclusion to borrow for the land if you were looking for something as large is that, which I think has been quoted $30-40 million in the past. We've seen that number with a police department, so.
It's probably around
certainly
30, yeah.
a couple $100,000 isn't
Yeah.
gonna put a dent in something like that. I mean, it's nice to have,
Yeah.
but it's not gonna,
Yeah.
you know, that's, I think that's what we were kind of, maybe, I don't wanna speak for you, but maybe that's what we were kind of tossing around. I was also wondering on the school department, it says, school department, school facilities, and school technology, so I know, facilities falls, or maybe I'm saying it wrong backwards, schools fall under facilities, is that kind of how it should, or facilities falls with schools?
No.
No, so how do I?
Facilities,
Facilities
yeah, we all work as one
is
team.
split, right, a little bit?
No, well,
Say-
I mean, technically, it's under the municipal organization,
Okay,
right? But the facility staff spends 90% of its time on
Right.
school-related activities.
yeah, I just couldn't phrase it the right way.
Sure.
Just probably just a silly question, and I don't want to waste too much time on it, but just a question. When we look at like vans and things like that, where do they gas up, and what budget is that under?
That's under the DPW.
Oh,
We do-
entirely separate.
We do, the
Areas.
DPW does all maintenance, we do all fuel, all those logistics. We have a fleet manager in the DPW who coordinates all the oil changes, make sure everything's on
Does it
cycle.
get billed back to
Can
the
I
schools?
just finish my sentence
Just
real
want to
quick?
know for the circle.
Huh?
Does it get billed back to the schools?
No.
No, okay.
That's, when you look at the budget, and I say 70% of the municipal, or 70% of the total budget is school-related, as I've said many times, that's not just account 300. There's 17, 18, 19, 20, 22 million worth of other services in the municipal budget that are school-related costs. The DPW is one of those in terms of, you know, maintenance of snow and ice removal, vehicle maintenance, fleet management, oil changes, gas, fuel, everything. So that comes out of the DPW budget.
Thank you.
So if it has wheels, the DPW pays for it.
That's correct.
Basically.
Yep. And they now do the fire department as well, even though that's contracted out. They now manage that through the fleet manager down in the fleet division of the DPW.
Okay, anybody else? Why don't we, I have one question on the traffic study.
Sure.
I could solve the traffic study, have them ride the bus, but, what are we studying? Thank you, Steve. Thank you. I wanted to mention that because the other night I listened to the planning board and I couldn't hear them. Is it to make the lineup of SUVs move
Bruce?
faster
Brutus,
that are in front of every school?
do you have anything to add? Lucas, you want to do it?
I'm happy to
It's
start
just,
the-
it's to redo the bus drop-off and the design of the Keller Sullivan area to deal with the redistricting. Is that right, Superintendent?
In essence, yes, so, got a little something going on here, we'll do this. So basically, it's okay, Steve, I think it's,
There's a line there and I'm not.
thank you. This particular leg of it, I'll circle back to the original part, but this covers the final designs, the construction, the environmental planning and surveying that you need to get to an accurate model of what you're going to be doing to improve the area. So there's a traffic concern that we've identified that we want to look at long-term planning. But as I said to school committee last night, this is not happening to start the school year. So I just want to set expectations for the community. We're not going to be engaging in tearing up roads and doing all these things as we start right now. But we're trying to lay the foundation for the phases that you go through to get to that place. What we anticipate is we're about to have more students in, because of our reconfiguration, we're putting more students at each site, which requires less buildings, but requires you to have more kids at each site. So with that, when you think about arrival, dismissal, drop-off, you'll have 1,000 kids going to the Lincoln Street, you'll have 1,000 kids going to Washington Street, all starting at the same time. So we anticipate that there's going to be some growing pains there in general, just like we experienced when we opened up Franklin High School. I remember I was out doing traffic duty back then as an assistant principal, and those first drop-off weeks, it was challenging and people were concerned. And now it's pretty fine-tuned. It took a little time. So we have been working collaboratively with the DPW, with facilities, around what is the long-term plan, but what are some of the short-term plans that we should have in place. One of the pieces was around studying the traffic. So I anticipate this month, we will circle back with the company Beta to get their suggestions, not only on traffic recommendations, but also what types of improvements could happen to properly have that particular site, be able to take buses in off the street, try to maximize the flow and efficiency on Lincoln Street and in the area, along with, in general, within the town, what's going to be the most efficient way for us to operate during drop-off and pickup and parking and things like that.
That was my question. The other question I have about that, and it may not relate, somewhere in all of the paper I got, there was $1 million for construction. Is that not this
Can-
year?
That's not this year.
That's
That's going to be in the future. They're going to present options. We're going to have to evaluate the cost effectiveness of those options. I'm guessing there's going to be several different choices, a more cost effective. There may even be some bridge costs of like doing a phase 1 and a phase 2. It just depends on that, but that's why the $190,000 is needed to make sure we know those options. And
Yep.
Superintendent, I think that study comes back probably late in the spring. I think it's anticipated in June.
I think this is going to be a multi-phase part. We may
Right.
get an initial, some initial information sooner than later on just the traffic, the outcome of their study. But I think this is a longer-term
Yeah.
project, if I, just to lay it out there.
Personally, trying to go from Sherman Avenue to the Stop and Shop 3 feet away.
There's a bridge directly from your house, Mr.
Mr.
Conley, get to you.
Maybe you could make a tunnel instead.
There we go.
Yeah.
We will mention that,
Yeah,
Heather, to the
good idea.
consultants.
It
We
just
will tell
would be
that.
much
to Beta.
faster.
Did you take that note, Brutus?
Yes, I did.
Fly over too.
We're thinking a tunnel instead.
Right.
Can I make one more comment? Just, I wanted to say, Mr. Helen mentioned earlier about the transfers, and there have been situations, and one we had recently, through your approval, we were able to look at some money that was not spent to its fullest to actually replace one of the special education vans sooner so that we could come to the table to ask for 2 instead of 3, which we knew we had in the fleet. And we work with Jay very closely, but,
there's Jay.
yep.
Jay's
through-
our fleet manager.
There's your fleet.
Wave, Jay? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I just think working collaboratively with the other departments to make that happen, and through Jamie's approval, we were able to chip away at one just based on some savings that we realized through some other parts of the capital plan. So we have used it that way, just as a more concrete example of more recently. Thank you.
Hey, what I'd like to do is just go to Facilities Department projects and see if anybody has any questions on those. Okay, the A to D on them.
Are you gonna take us through those, or we're just
Yeah,
gonna?
I'm gonna go one.
Sure.
No, he was gonna
No.
go
Oh.
for
No,
No.
Don't need, great.
yeah, just so you have an opportunity to, you know, the storage facility at the DVR. I don't have a question, somebody might, that's all.
Nope.
No question.
Actually, I do have one question on the new police station design. We're getting designer services, and maybe it's just me not understanding, designer services for new police station, but we don't have a new police station or a location yet? Is that, am I thinking about this the wrong way?
Yep, so, again, we've hired the OPM, we've already financed that. This is for the architect to do the actual design of the building. And the 2 first steps they'll do, I'm guessing, I think we have a meeting on late February, I think it's February 25th. It'll be the next police station building committee. And our consultants and architects are going to start to do a public engagement process. Open houses, feedback. We call it develop the program, which is really develop what is it that our police need for 50 years, because you want to build a building like the last one for 30 years, we want to do it for 50. And then they will start to listen to all that and kind of put the pieces together. They will also do a survey of the entire community based on that program and say, you know, some people will say to me, oh, well, there's a piece of land up on Prospect Street. Can't do that. You need to be near a highway, you need to be within a certain proximity. And so they do all of that work as they do the design of the building.
Got it. It's not so much at redesigning something specific, it's more understanding what our requirements are so that we can start figuring out where and how and all that. Okay, that makes
Exactly.
sense.
And the facade, like all of that stuff,
Right.
engage, green space, things like that. Yep.
As a follow-up to that, does that take an existing building completely off the table? Like, is that not gonna happen? And I haven't been part of
What-
those meetings, so,
What do you mean?
like, so, because if you're getting an architect to kind of design things, that assumes from scratch your ideal scenario. Now, all of a sudden, you have an existing building. Did you waste money thinking about the blank slate when now you have a starting
But an
slate?
existing
Yeah.
building wouldn't be able to give the same type of things that.
I just don't like, so
police
it
station
assumes that any existing building would have to get demolished if you're
Yeah.
buying an existing building?
Yeah. Let me just take a step back. So, yeah, I think I understand the question. They will evaluate the current site as well. I'm sure that will be a play. We've discussed this, and you're right, Natalie, I mean, it's been referenced a couple times. There may be a couple of substations, it may be a headquarters. If the current facility can be used for a portion of it, it's still municipal property. Actually, if you want to know the truth, it's school property. They built the police station on school land 35 years ago. I don't even know if they knew that, but they did it. They also built it about 6 feet from a wetland, so that building wouldn't actually be able to be constructed today. So there's some constraints with the current site of expanding that site. That site right now can't be expanded at all because of the wetland. But that said, that building could still be very useful. Down the line, just like we have with Davis Thayer and others, we could end up leasing out that building, we could sell it, we could rehab it. It could still be useful space for public safety, it could still be used for recreation, it could be used for another school or municipal purpose, we're not sure yet. But they will evaluate and look at all those choices as part of the architectural design process. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I think
It
it's
doesn't,
just hard 'cause
nothing,
it's like-
nothing doesn't, we don't necessarily just bulldoze things over. You're gonna look at the first site and look exactly, what is it that's in the best interest of everybody from a public safety standpoint for the next 50 years? And then we'll work backwards and say, well, is there another use with this building? Once people go inside and we do open houses, it'll all start to fill into place. Because if you've never been in the police station before, and I don't remember TJ's joke about blue, the jail cells or whatever, unless you're in the, you really don't know how cramped and how insufficient that space is until you really go through it. And when you go inside, it's not exactly like a wide open space that's reusable very easy. To reuse that space would probably cost a lot of money, but that's what our architects and our OPM will do. So it doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna knock it over or knock down the old building, like the old high school. There may be other options, that's why we hire a third-party consultant to come in and do the work.
Got it, okay, no, I think that helps, I think I was just worried about, we don't know where it is yet, so I wouldn't want something designed and then be like, ah crap, actually the space we got has a kind of a hill, and so now we have to like build this design, you know what I mean, and then now it's an additional 50 grand to adapt the architectural design that was ideal, but now didn't fit the space. So it's just hard to design when you don't know where it's going.
Couldn't agree with you more, but they'll do an analysis on sites, and the community, I'm sure, will have a robust discussion. This is a big reason, by the way, and people ask me this question all the time. In that MOU last year, and why the council was fully supportive of the MOU with the police station in there and dealing with the Parmenter site, is because that is a 20-acre site that's free. And it's not saying like we had to close the school to do that, that wasn't really what was gonna happen. But there is 21 acres behind Parmenter that is public property. You're looking at probably an 8-digit number. If the town of Needham, for example, literally purchased like 7 or 8 parcels of homes and businesses to construct the site that they had to build their police station a few years ago. We want to avoid that. I mean, that cost them well over $10 million to buy those parcels to do it. And that was a big reason why we were trying to show people in the public, and albeit it was very rushed, and I think we all know that, that was a real big reason why that was part of that, was to show some people that we were trying to work together to make sure that we were saving money or not spending money that we didn't have to, because we might already have sites that are available. And I still believe that financially, getting a debt exclusion to pass for a police station, telling people it's only the building, but that we're not spending $10 million, $5 million, $15 million on land, I think is a better sell to the public, because that price tag is obviously gonna be much more expensive if you have to buy land with it. So That was a good, I've said this many times publicly, but that's a reason why a current municipal piece of property is gonna be most advantageous.
Gotcha, okay. And then on the charging thing where it says the National Grid incentives of 850,000, where did those go? Or how do those get actualized?
What do you mean by that?
Like, well, we get incentives of 850,000, right, so that's either what, like credits back, or is that going towards electric credits in the future?
I thought was Kevin here?
I don't know if it's kind of like the solar
Yeah.
farm type of thing, where we get, like, it gets eaten away
Yeah.
over time, that will hopefully help the bottom line over years.
Most of our charging stations have been funded through incentives through National Grid or net metering credits and a variety of other solar credits and a variety of other things. So this is essentially the quote we got for these charging stations. And I apologize, I don't remember where exactly those ones are gonna go because we've been installing them at fire department, DPW, and we've put a bunch at the high school and a few of the other schools. And I just don't remember exactly where these 12 are gonna go. But National Grid has paid for an exorbitant amount of our LED light transition. All of the lights in all of these buildings, in all of our schools, have been paid for through incentives or net metering credits through National Grid. So I put this line in there because that's the incentive we get for investing the $25,000 to put in those 12 spots. We're gonna get $850,000 worth of services back of additional charging stations. And I just don't remember where these 12 are going. But I know they're installing them at fire, DPW, and at a bunch of the schools.
Gotcha, no, it actually meant the 850,000, like where that's going. Like-
And a couple, a
But
couple
so
of
the
the,
incentives things, I think.
and some here as well. Amy,
Okay.
yeah. The ones in the back, by the way, and not to belabor this, but when you get certain incentives on certain projects, like the ones in the back here, we can't actually charge cars in the back spaces out of here. So some National Grid requirements on some of those mean we can't actually charge people to use them because that's the way the programs work that they have.
Got it.
And then there are others where there will be charging for sure. In fact, that's something we're gonna talk about during the budget process this year.
Got it. Sorry, so what I was actually saying, which I think you answered, was how do we get back that 850? But I think
Right.
you answered it through
Yeah.
like the incentives and lights, and so we'll see kind of it, we won't really see it, because operating budget will just be lower than it should by
Yes.
pieces that we got along the way.
The streetlight account, because you've been on that's a good example of where the bill
Just
has
keeps
come
on
way
increasing.
down.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Got it, okay.
And we are finally getting to a place where we're gonna be charging people for charging their cars at a lot of locations. So that will be a revenue source that will be offsetting some of the budget costs that we'll get into a little later, later this spring.
Gotcha, great, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just a quick question on the senior center sprinkler system. I think there was just a burst pipe there a week or so ago, or I think. Is this to fix that?
Correct.
There is no money to fix that?
No,
Is it still closed?
no. The library is at the senior center. I don't know where I would get the money to fix it. We,
It was just in the library that it was?
Yes.
Burst? Okay.
yeah.
So 250 grand to fix this one area of the thing, and there is no money anywhere else to fix that? That library is planned to stay closed until further notice?
That's correct. I don't know if it's gonna stay closed, because they've been cleaning it up, and I haven't got the latest update, in the last few days, the last couple days, but, this is for the insulation. So actually, the money is going to putting in the correct system, and I did see the building commissioner here. If you have engineering questions, Gus can answer them. So we're putting in a wet sprinkler system. It was put in with a dry system when the building was built, and we're putting in foam insulation in the roof. Really, the issue is about heat getting up into the sprinkler area. When the building was built some 20 years ago, there's a lot of space in some of those eaves. And so we need to make sure that we put in foam insulation within that, and that's what this money is gonna go to, is to put in the proper sprinkler system so this doesn't happen again, and make sure we have that proper insulation on the roof and within all of those eaves. Gus, did I explain that to the best of my ability?
Very well. Very well.
Because I think if they go further, you're gonna have to.
This is the.
Does that answer your question, Heather? Is that?
Yes, but I think,
But this is to fix the overall problem.
Exactly.
As opposed to the individual problem in the library that I
Correct.
heard was a single pipe or something to that, and I don't know. This is to resolve what should have been done when the building was built
Correct.
and wasn't done. That above the ceiling is just, it's like,
There's a lot of room.
yeah.
There's a lot of space, but this is not just to fix the problem. We had a pipe there burst, similar dynamic, 3 years ago, and we did get all of our insurance money back. So the reason why this is critical, one, because we're not gonna get insurance money a second time. And two, we just have to get this fixed and done, obviously for many reasons, but, this is gonna solve the root cause of the issue. This is not going to pay for just the cleanup or any damage.
Yeah, so it feels like it's a problem that has been known, because it just happened 3 years ago. And so and I just joined finance committee, I feel like recently, so, has this always been in talks, like, oh, we need to get a new sprinklers, we need to fix this up, and, or what we need the money for it? Like, has there been discussions about that in the past? Because I just feel like, I'm surprised there's not already funds, like, kind of put aside for that, based on how we save money for other projects, you know?
I think the issue is, and I guess this gets to the property piece too,
Yeah.
these are the savings accounts we've had.
Yeah.
And because dollars are so scarce in this community, we all know the issues with the operating budget and our tax levy and all that stuff. There's only so much bandwidth we have, and the town, quite frankly, you know, and it's something I'm certainly proud of, and proud of my team, this is a big reason why we've been trying to create little mini piggy banks, if you will. Because we've never, up until 5, 6, 7 years ago, ever had really any of these. The town has always spent up to every dollar that they've ever had. And we've never really put money away. This is a huge reason why we were able to gain the AAA bond rating status. And so we are certainly more prepared than we've been, but we've just tried to ration off, Heather, I think, you know, as much as we can, because obviously, and you said it earlier, and you're right, you know, there's just a lot of competing demands. And so we've tried to put aside some money. There's really no other funds, you know, that are available. There's no grants.
It just feels like of those 4 things listed under there, that is an urgent need. And if we didn't have this capital money,
That's right.
what would you do?
It's a
You'd be
great question.
stuck. You'd go to the stabilization fund, I guess, and
Yeah,
just do something like that.
we'd probably come up with some other creative way to cobble some stuff together
Yeah.
to figure it out. Yep.
Okay, all right, that's good, thank you.
I assume this is gonna, like the high school problem, 3 or 4 years ago. It's the same concept, but we're gonna fix the damn thing now.
You know, I know there's been some talk out there and some, you know, lack of a better word, I guess, blogs, you know, that this is like our 3rd or 4th sprinkler break. We had one at Keller Sullivan. But just to make sure the full story is told, you know, we have an insurance company, they have lawyers, we have lawyers. We've collected back monies for those projects over time, but those take really a long time to go through the legal process, and the pandemic certainly hurt on one of them. But to your point, Heather, no question about it. I actually said to the staff, if that leak happened today, we'd have to find a whole nother way to do it. And actually, the OPEB money, this money would be going to the OPEB contribution. So the OPEB contribution at 10% would have been 450,000-ish. The schools redid, kind of reshuffled their capital requests, and then this came in, and now we're taking money away from that OPEB contribution to pay for these things. So if this leak had happened tomorrow, we would be sitting here talking about a different thing. So in some ways, the day the leak happened actually really worked out in its benefit. It was kind of one of those sun, moon, and stars thing where I'm actually kind of glad that this happened. And the facility staff have gotten me quotes on all of this stuff in the last couple of weeks to give us a ballpark. And we do believe that this money will go a long way into solving the problem down there. We could still, by the way, we still have to go out to bid. Well, we did get an emergency declaration, but we still have to get quotes. So it still may cost a little bit more, but you know, it's going to take us a month or so to go through all that procedure to get an engineer to do the designing of the sprinkler system. And so this cash flow absolutely helps us out, helps Gus and Kevin be able to fix the problem.
Okay. Have we put facilities to bed? Okay. Technology is one item. Laptops, I don't see an issue. I don't see a lot of technology money in the schools either. Is that, did I miss something?
Nope. Nope, I think, Tim does a fantastic job managing his money, he really does. Last year, you may recall, he came with a cost-effective solution to extend our warranties on a lot of things. Actually, this money, this 60,000 is gonna go toward those laptops that are now completely cooked and cannot get extended or dragged out for another year. But I think also, my guess is in the next couple years, and I've talked to the superintendent about this and the tech director, he needs to come forward with making sure that, everything doesn't flood all at once here. Chromebooks, teacher laptops, screens, fiber, Wi-Fi points of access. I mean, we still have, this is an area, Heather, I think to your point earlier about savings, this is an area where the tech director has been asking for a stabilization fund to put money away for these issues for him for many years. We never can because we don't have enough money to put away because he'll just spend it right away. So the need is significant, and I do have a lot of concerns about Tim's capital program that over the next couple of years it's going to be expensive, but it's something we have to do. And I know next year he'll come with a more robust plan with a lot of other items that are on it, so.
When you mentioned Tim, and I remember him.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Speaking, but.
Technology
He
director.
falls under, okay, he's the technology director for.
He's for
For
everybody.
the whole, for everybody,
But
okay. so I
20 years ago or whatever it was,
I'm
town
sure.
took over facilities.
Yeah,
Because we had the bandwidth and the expertise on that, and technology was such a big issue, obviously, for schools growing in the turn of the century. The schools managed the technology department. But we all really work, we all have meetings together, we all work very, very closely together. And Tim's right down the hall in this building, so
yeah.
myself and the superintendent or any of the staff can, and the facilities department is in here as well. Facilities department's on the 3rd floor, right next to the superintendent's office and my office, so we all had talk, see each other in the hall, see each other in the cafeteria, we're all very accessible.
Okay, moving right along. Fire department is A through F. Questions on any of them? You have enough expertise sitting back there? Go.
And these were all their requests, and the fire chief just got another $25,000 grant today for safety gear, so congratulations to the fire department.
Joan, he'll know I'm into this stuff. A portable radio costs $12,000? Is it covered in gold?
No, it's 60. 60.
Oh,
Able to
no,
purchase
portable
60
radios are
portable
fine.
radios.
60 of them cost $12,000.
Oh,
There's not 60 of them.
Yeah, 60 units.
Not 60, he's correct.
okay.
Oh, you're right. It says-
Wow.
So if you remember, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, we had requested some capital money to start a replacement program for the radios. Thankfully, in that same time frame, we actually got a grant from FEMA, an AFG grant for $623,000. So the 623 plus the money that we thankfully got from you, we were able to get 60 radios, which outfitted the entire department. That was almost $1 million for those radios. Right now, though, we actually have 61 personnel. So I have one person that's operating with a 20-year-old radio, so that is one radio now, because it's an all-band radio that's ruggedized for the fire service. And that's the going rate now.
Can I talk to them, son?
Soon, it's just a matter of programming, but you would be a, yeah.
Any other question? That's
Pretty straightforward.
Anybody? No?
Thank you.
Hey, you guys can leave now.
Oh, they have so much fun, they're not going anywhere.
Police department, same thing.
Yep.
Vehicles, I can't put, when I started on this committee, a police cruiser cost $35,000. What are they now, 70?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's in 10 years.
Amy said, I remember when they cost $35,000 too. You're right.
Of course, on the other one, I remember when an ambulance was 130 grand in there, 500.
And a ladder was $1 million.
5 and a quarter, yeah, no. Any questions on any of this? It's all pretty usual stuff. I have another question. I noticed in the documentation that you eschewed hybrids again. These are, you paid to upgrade, get a credit to go from a hybrid back to gasoline. I'm driving hybrids now. I'm a devotee. Just curious. So what we,
Ford's not making them.
huh?
Ford's not making them in the police interceptor package. Can't get them.
Really?
Nope,
By Toyota.
never. It's not police rated. Yeah, no, the Ford Police Interceptor is, they're just not making them in hybrids right now. We can't get them.
I just saw a bid for state police for 200 of them. They drive Fords too.
They do drive Fords, and they do have hybrids, but I don't think they're not getting any other hybrids. We can't get them. Can't get them off the state bid. They're just not available.
Okay, answer my
State police might have taken them all.
question. Could be, I don't know.
Seriously.
I know I'm getting 40 miles a gallon.
Yeah, and it's taken us a year to get them anyway. The vehicles that were authorized last year's capital are just coming in now.
Well, that was my
Those are
question.
those are just regular.
For both departments, are we in a situation in DPW also? He's gonna kill me.
We're friends again.
With that lead time, for cruisers, for fire trucks, for ambulances, for instance, we still have one pending somewhere. I'm sure for trucks for the DPW, are we at the point where we should be anticipating what we're gonna buy next year and get in the queue to order them?
Our form of government gives us a 4 to 5 month lead time. We are ahead and we put our orders probably before every other municipality in Massachusetts, which is why we actually, if you notice, we're bumping this schedule up even more, where the council will have their meeting if the recommendation tonight in a couple weeks, and I might be able to get this money authorized on February 5th, which means we can put the orders in on February 6th or 7th when they get account numbers. It's the earliest we've ever done. Most communities that have town meeting, all those warrant articles make them effective July 1st. So every other municipality that has town meeting has to wait till July, August, or September to put in those orders. We're 4 or 5 months ahead of everybody else, and this is still the dynamic. I think people just, it's the same post-pandemic problems of supply chain issues,
That's
back
why I
orders
was
of stuff.
saying-
You see things like disasters, obviously in Los Angeles, you know, that's gonna get a priority somewhere down the line if there's a need, right? There's other things that just happen, and I think dump trucks, I think, are 2 years almost. There's only so much we can do to put in orders so far in advance. The fire truck was the ladder was a huge win, as you remember. So we're pretty good on this stuff, but there's only
And they
so
haven't
far you
started
can go in
building
advance.
that yet.
What's that, the ladder?
The
It's
ladder?
2 years.
They started building it a week and a half ago. So it's due, March 17th, it should be up.
Yeah. Well, it's good Irish truck.
That's what I thought.
And it's
Happy
the,
St. Patrick's Day.
it's not just the vehicles. I mean, the vehicles were ready, but we were having trouble getting some of the upfitting equipment, you know, like
Right.
the light bars. So there were chips that were being made somewhere that we just couldn't get them. Federal Signal couldn't get them so that they couldn't basically create the light bars so that we could put the light bars on the cars. But this has just been common. It's about a year.
All right, we have one more.
This is sort of a combo question. I remember a few years ago, you guys had acquired like an ATV style little vehicle, and you had gotten it because you got, it was like, I was just gonna say drug money, but I didn't know if that was appropriate, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And it was a really cool thing, like an initiative to go out and get that, and, you know, all paid for. Do opportunities like that come around? I just saw this other Polaris that the firefighters need. Is there any drug money for them, or is there any way to like swap that around? No?
No, this-
I don't know, I just remembered that.
The So what happens is one of our detectives is a task force officer.
Yeah.
So he works with the Homeland Security Investigations. So majority of his time, he's working with them for, you know, interstate drug activity that's occurring, you know, including Franklin. It's a federal asset forfeiture program, and the money can only be spent on the FPD and only in certain categories: equipment, training, things like that. I can't pay, I can pay overtime for things, but I cannot supplant. So I couldn't pay for a car unless you people all tell me no when I ask for it. Something to that effect, so we can't supplant. They go, oh, you got federal asset forfeiture money, why don't you use that? No.
Right.
If you tell me I can't get it because of financial reasons, then we could possibly do it. So it buys all the things that normally, if we came, you'd tell us you can't afford it. And so the Polaris would have been, you know, it's not a nicety, it's something that we need with the SNET Trail and the State Forest and things like that, but you wouldn't be able to give it to us because you can't afford it. A lot of the safety equipment that is in the cars to use, God forbid if we come into a major critical incident, a lot of the medical stuff, that was all bought by federal asset for. A lot of things that we just, if we didn't have that money, we would not be able to do it, but it can only be spent at the department. So sorry, Jim, you're not getting anything.
Sorry. I'm trying to find money and get it around, and we'll see.
Yeah, so a lot of the time, we just don't come and ask because we just know that we're not, you know, the funding's not there. So we just get ahead of it, and if we know that we need it and we have the money, then we'll purchase it through that.
You call. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Moving right along. Arts and culture?
Oh,
No,
DPW.
DPW, sorry, I missed that. Questions on the DPW? It's only 4 items this year, that's small. Anybody?
Beautification, but
Is the
No.
downtown beautification cleaning up sidewalks and stuff too?
No,
I didn't think so.
Christmas, it's the lights on the trees,
That's what it is.
the banners, yeah. It's all the festivity stuff that you see around the holidays, throughout the spring.
James, it's important to note, that's not
Why don't you come up here and say? Sorry to.
What would a meeting be without?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Bruce Kennergy, Public Works Director. I just want you to know that that's not like an annual thing we ask for. I think the last
Right.
appropriation, I think was 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, before the pandemic.
Yeah, so we just delve it out. We need, you know, like, is lights replacement, stuff like that, and, you know, the flowers and stuff. So I just want to make that clear.
You can shut the comment off now, Christmas is over.
We, Carl,
No.
that's a day we're on.
Credit, maybe. LED, right?
Oh, no. People, no. Nope. We've been down there, nope. We've done that before, and people, what do? They come
Yeah.
flying back, say, how could you do that? Take it down, it's so beautiful.
Leave
It
the
makes the
gazebo
town look so
alone.
gorgeous at night. I know, we made that mistake
They're all
once.
LED lights, right?
Yeah,
So we
we-
get some sort of credit.
Yeah,
Put those on.
yeah.
At least it's
That's-
not as bad as Melville.
It's
Yeah,
just
they're
people,
insane.
people just love it. And they do, the lights that Carlos somehow finds that no other town can find, those ones that kind of drip down and give those, like, people just, the positivity it brings is well worth the money we can spend on it. People
They're all
really,
LEDs, I'm sure, so.
people love the blue lights, they love the stuff on Main Street, they love the banners, all that stuff. People, yeah, we're never making that mistake again.
You see where the 850 from National Grid went. Any other questions on the DPW? If you need your water meter changed, they do a great job and do it quickly. Arts and culture. Questions? Who's that distributed under here in this building? Who's-
The Director of Arts, Culture, and the Creative Economy, Corey Shea. She just started a little less than a year ago. We will take this cheap plug opportunity on January 21st, next week. Next Tuesday. The Town of Franklin's revamped website will launch. And then franklinculture.org, people should go to that too. We're getting that ready. That's on a different platform. We're getting that ready for, well, just in general, to bring in more economic development to Franklin. As you'll see in our meals tax numbers, December was a huge month in Franklin, and that had a lot to do with the SIP Shop and Stroll event. And so that's what we want. We want people coming into Franklin, eating out here, spending time here, And obviously, as Amy's written in the memo, we have like virtually annual major celebrations for another several years. We get the state's 250th. We're planning some big things for the World Cup in a couple of years, which is a huge opportunity for us because it's all in Foxborough, right down the street. So we want people to visit Franklin and eat out here. And then obviously the 250th anniversary, which we'll be establishing a whole committee on that later this year, a few years from now. So we're trying to use franklinculture.org as our one-stop shop for things going on in Franklin. And I would note we are still one of only 3 cultural certified districts in Metro West. So we have a pretty good designation. We got a great story to tell, and having a revamped website will help hopefully bring some business into Franklin.
Okay, thank you. Water and sewer enterprise, take those together.
Well, they do a great job with water meters, so you should just rubber stamp this.
They were there, they found it.
There's money in there.
Good cut. There's one.
I stopped getting 748, a notice that I use 748 gallons on Fridays every week, which I did. Questions on? Huh?
You had a leak.
Yeah.
You really like this
How
balance.
like that?
Your lawn must be green.
Far from it. Anything? Water enterprise?
Yeah, is some of the sewer stuff part of the big dig that's going on? Big dig? No. No?
No. No.
Sewer rehabilitation, it's not that? It's not,
No.
okay.
You want to talk about the rehab projects, Doug? No, it's not. That is the biggest
Big
rehab
dig.
ever, but these are different
Oh.
rehabilitation projects.
Here comes the water guy.
Yeah. And sewer.
Yeah, Water and Sewer, how you doing? Doug Martin, Water and Sewer Superintendent. The sewer rehab, $500,000, that's so that we can continue our lining work. We do I&I removal projects, and where we go in, basically put a liner down a sewer pipe so that no groundwater or infiltration gets into the sewer. In turn, that ends up saving us money because we're sending less groundwater to be treated at Charles River. So we just want to send the dirty water.
And is this, I mean, that's a significant, 500 grand, right, $500,000. So
Yeah.
again, is this similar to the situation with the senior center where, like, if you can't plan for it, like you didn't have this 500 sitting around in your bank account that you could just use, you had to wait for the capital fund.
This is an enterprise account.
What's
It's
that?
different.
It's different. Oh, my bad, sorry.
Yes, so
Sorry about that.
we're utility, so all our money comes from
Oh.
the sewer that's
Sorry.
used, quote unquote, yeah.
If you flush and it
If you
goes
flush your
that way,
toilet,
you're
yeah,
paying for that.
you're paying for that, yeah.
Got
Your
it,
neighbor
sorry.
doesn't.
That's okay.
Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, and this is, so we're on phase 8 of that lining project, so this would be phase 9. We're just gonna continue going in different areas. So we finished all of downtown, now we're working up on Pine Street right now, that's where phase 8 is right now. This phase 9 will be in that general area as well, over on Pine Street.
So what percent will be done and how much more do we have to go?
I don't have those numbers, yeah. We've done a really good number,
50-50.
yeah. Do you-
It's miles and
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's miles, yeah. We've done a lot of mains. And we're focusing on,
We figures to drop to section 9.
we're focusing on, it's really the mains that are older, made out of concrete, asbestos cement,
Wonderful stuff.
yeah, that stuff, yeah.
It's, Doug, it's been a very successful program, started a long time ago. It's mostly done initially in the downtown area, and particularly the old, the clay pipes that were still in use, and it really seals them up and basically keep the groundwater out. It costs us less money, so we actually save.
No,
But it's an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
Because we just, the
But
the
once
pipes
it's
keep.
lined, you don't have to go back and reline them 10 years later.
No,
No, it's-
hundreds of years,
Yeah.
but we got a lot, yeah, we got a
It's a
lot
lot
of,
cheaper than digging up the
Yeah,
road.
well, exactly.
it's a great program.
I was just curious as to how much more you had to do.
A lot.
A lot.
We'll be back next year for this.
And we also team it up, so we team it up with areas where we know where we're gonna have to do water main replacement, that stuff. So Pine Street's definitely one of our top areas to do water main replacement, so just trying to keep ahead of it. We'll line it this year, and hopefully as the money comes available, we'll do the water main and then the road and so forth and so on.
Oh, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Jamie's gonna hate this word, but I just realized in all of this, we didn't say anything about PFAS. Is there no money that's needed for PFAS remediation stuff? I know you hate it.
I do.
Currently, now, so we have two projects. One's under construction, Well 7. That's for PFAS remediation currently. And then Fisher Street Water Treatment Plant's already funded. We're getting an SRF loan that's going out to bid February, and bids will open in April.
What's the SRF?
SRF stands for State Revolving Fund. So that's a 1.5, at least 1.5% interest rate that we get because we're a housing choice community. But also PFAS right now is eligible for 0% financing, so.
So right now, we're taking steps to do what we have to do,
Mhm.
and we don't have any needs that are.
Currently.
And there will be PFAS settlement money from the federal and local. I can't even keep track of all the lawsuits. I don't even think any of us can keep track of all the lawsuits anymore, but there will be a significant amount of funds coming to the town eventually, kind of like the opioid settlement money, and that will help offset our costs, which has certainly made me feel a lot better about PFAS, right? Because the financial, it's a lot. But this SRF program is critical. Usually it's a standard 2% loan. But as Doug mentioned, because we're a housing choice community and we're certified, we get an extra 0.5%, which does save a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then I think on this, they gave 0% because of the federal mandates, right? Or
Yeah,
something
so
like that.
all of Well 7's project, because it's totally for PFAS remediation, will be 0%, and that construction loan's like $5 million. For Fisher Street, I don't think all of it will be for 0% because only a portion of it is for PFAS. But that project is scheduled to be around 20 million, so you can imagine the savings that we're getting on that.
Thank you.
Just one more thing, because I don't even think Jamie has considered this one yet, since we're talking sewer. As you know, we're part of Charles River Pollution Control. There's another permit out there, the MS4 permit, has to do with drinking water, also has to do with sewer. And another unfunded mandate, they have to deal with PFAS in the waste that they have to dispose of. In other words, there's PFAS in the poopies, and now they have to, when they catch it, they have to send it somewhere. And it's getting very expensive because people obviously don't want to take it and get rid of it, the PFAS. But that's another cost eventually we're going to see in a year or two that's going to come through the cost of the treatment at the Charles River Pollution Control District they have to handle, but the costs are going to be passed on to us. It's just another, I thought you'd like that.
I love it.
Just more good.
You had to add that right in there at the end.
Sorry. It's not gonna help you, but I recently heard there's PFAS in toilet paper. So that's actually,
It's in everything.
It's in everything.
It's, in your, it's on your
So-
coat, it's,
Right.
you eat it every morning, you drink it all the time, it's,
so it's going to be
Yeah.
in this samples that they test or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
or what.
Yeah, it's already
Like,
there.
It's definitely there, yeah. Not great. Okay.
Another quick question. PFAS on
It's very personal.
Fisher Street and what was the other well?
it's funny.
Well 7, Elizabeth,
But we have, memory serves 12 wells in the ground, yes?
14.
Yeah, it's 14 away, you count them.
14, so do those eventually have to be treated also?
We hope not.
However many there are.
Even 1 and 2, it's necessarily hasn't, we're kind of planning for the future. It's not like, you want to explain.
Yeah, so currently, really the only one that we needed to treat was Well 7. We needed to do an upgrade at our Fisher Street or Haywood Street plant, which treats wells 1, 2, 2A, and 2B. So we figured, hey, we're doing the upgrade, let's plan for it, right? There is PFAS there. It's not necessarily at the levels currently where the EPA says, hey, you need to treat it. But that's not to say that it couldn't go up at some point, so.
Okay, anything else? Silence is golden.
Thank you.
Move on. Did you want to do anything with the chart on free cash, or is that just information?
I'm sorry? Oh, no, it's just information.
Information. It's actually pretty stable. Okay.
We get 2 resolutions.
So I have to make the motion, right?
So is this
Do I
motion
need to
about
read
capital.
You read it.
Yeah, so I make a motion that the sum of $1,503,850 be transferred from free cash to the OPEB trust fund and the fire truck fields budget and property acquisition stabilization accounts as listed in the town memo for the purposes outlined above.
I second.
Is this where we can make recommendations?
No.
It's multi.
That's after?
Recommendations on changing policies?
Yeah, changing
Now
some of the
that's
ones around.
different discussion.
It's different, okay, I just didn't know.
But it would probably be before that, wouldn't it? Because, well, I guess.
You need to make a motion in a second, then you can have a discussion.
Oh, gotcha,
Oh,
okay.
then you can, okay,
So,
sorry.
motion made.
I second.
It was second.
Made and seconded. You wanted to spoke.
You guys can discuss.
Discussion.
You can ask me questions if you want.
I think she has questions on the policies.
Well, not
Is
so,
that,
I was thinking, we were talking before how we could potentially make recommendations to change some of these figures around, based on what we've heard tonight.
Yep.
Obviously, there's more we've heard, you know, you guys have the,
I personally would consider that an agenda item for a future meeting, because this isn't gonna change tonight.
I think what she's asking, I think what she wants to do is propose a change.
yeah.
So we wouldn't choose.
Because the next step on this is to go to the town council, right? So they're just, so then we wouldn't have a chance to make any adjustments. That-
Okay.
Formally by charter, you're making a recommendation to the council. If you want to recommend a change to this, the group has to agree, or you need to vote on an individual item. So if you said you wanted to take, X dollars from something and do something else with it, you'd have to get the consensus of the group, vote on that item to change that recommendation, and then go and then make a motion in a second. You have the motion in a second right now to approve this. If you want to change it, you can make an motion to make an amendment,
Okay,
and
so
then
should
that
we
would
do
have to be seconded.
Can we just have the discussion about?
You can
what
also
I'm
have the
thinking,
discussion
or-
right now without making a motion or amendment. That's correct. Yep.
Why don't you state your case?
This is, yeah, that's right,
And
I was
then
hoping that would be.
We'll leave this year alone.
Why don't you just tell us what you want to do?
Okay, this is what I wanted to,
And then
I mean, just say it.
this is what I'm thinking.
My suggestion is we'll leave this year alone, and then
Let-
anything.
Well, let's
Just
see.
let her say whatever
What's
she,
your-
what's the change you're looking for?
All right, ready? Here we go.
Yes.
Okay, so my thought was regarding property acquisition, how it's requesting 200,000. My thought is to make that 100,000, put 50,000 to the school's facilities project, and start the tech stabilization fund for another 50,000.
The tech you could do that. The tech stabilization fund would then I'd have to
We have
get
to
a,
create one.
I have to have the council vote to create a
Right.
stabilization, which they could do.
Yeah.
They may not agree, but I don't know how they'll feel about that.
Well, listening to the fact that it's imminent, I mean, everything's imminent,
Yeah.
really, but tech is always, you need an upgrade, you need a new laptop, you need a new phone, you need radios, you need this, you need that. So it feels like you've mentioned that in the past, a tech stabilization fund has been requested, yet never started. And the reason I'm thinking taking it from the property acquisition fund is while I understand there may be a future need to purchase property, and that does come up quick and I understand it, but at this point, I can't imagine we could purchase any property in this town for $410,000. So you mentioned that if we were going to purchase property, we could do a debt exclusion if it was gonna be something big like the police station. So I feel like this 410 grand may not be of use, whereas we could use it, the 200, you could use some of that money.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm just thinking split, do 50 grand over to the school so that, while I understand, I'm certain they're going to follow whatever the movers tell them to do, but moving, the facilities project, all this stuff is necessary now, more than the property acquisition, from my opinion. You're right, you have executive, you know more than me, but this is what I say. And then hearing everything about all the money that's going towards tech stuff, I just felt like we should start the fund. If we've got a property acquisition fund, we should have a tech stabilization fund. That's my thought. Discuss.
I'd have to be sold in on the tech stabilization. I get that tech happens all the time. Laptops are cheap, phones are cheap, if you told me like Munis, I think that's like the operating system for the town, right?
Yeah.
If you told me like, Munis kind of sucks and we need an upgrade, and that's $500,000 or $1 million, like, if it's something that's $1 million, I think you start building a stabilization to it. I'm not seeing or hearing that need, I'm hearing it's a couple $100,000 a year, which seems manageable to me and not of need of another stabilization account. So that's just my point on that. And then the other move kind of becomes inconsequential. I feel like we checked all the boxes. The only one that didn't get the full ask was the school, but to Jamie's point, he feels like there's extra there that could be efficiently used. So it just doesn't seem like, I get it, like, the property acquisition you feel like is a kind of a waste of time, but you gotta start building it for it to be meaningful. It's gotta start somewhere for it to eventually become meaningful. Maybe it's not anything for a new police station, but maybe it becomes like a senior center-esque, I don't know, something smaller. I can't quite think of what it would be, but like something smaller that
Remember what
you
we
need
had
$1.5
the
million
special
for
meeting.
or 2 for, like you gotta start that somewhere. So I'm in favor of leaving as is.
There was a special meeting that we had where we actually did buy property for under $400,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was,
A one-time.
Yeah, that was especially, yeah.
Doesn't mean another one-time thing can't
Can't
come
come
up,
up. So.
you know,
Ken?
but
Chris?
I second starting a tech fund up.
Yeah, I would, I absolutely agree with Heather's concerns around a tech fund. I think it makes sense to start one, considering how often we've talked about it.
Yeah.
But I see your point around the fact that, you know, that the current needs, the current layout, the current plan here makes sense. It's really just, you know, and I'm comfortable with going with what we have now, but I would second a recommendation that we, you know, not that we don't have enough little side funds, but technology is key, and we need one too. So.
I tend to agree with Natalie that, you know, having a tech fund, it's a little, I don't know, everything's, you could call everything technology nowadays, and it is pretty consumable at some level. It's like having a pencil fund. You know, I don't mean to diminish the need for it. I just think it is more commoditized nowadays versus a large, special, you know, one-time ask. Like you said, if a new ERP system was needed and that's $1 million, that's different. You know, this is more everyday spend.
I see it more as like a vehicle.
Yeah.
It's not as expensive as a vehicle to, you know, you
No, but you also need how many for all the students in town?
understood, but you're not replacing
At some point,
thousands
you're
at a
gonna have to.
time.
But you are, you replace,
You will.
but let's say you're replacing 20% of them every year, and you're replacing them every 5 years, so you would have kind of bulk replacements. Now, that said, that doesn't, you know, that's different from an ERP, I get that
Right.
too, but it just, you know, that's where I agree with Heather, in that it does make sense to have something like that. I just don't know that it's the priority right now, despite the fact that it's not a bad idea where possible to put more money towards the schools or towards some of the other places where we need it. Yeah. But I hear you on it feels a little pencil-like.
It's just everything's technology, you
Yeah.
know, it's just, you know, at some point, we have to draw a line on stabilization funds, that's all.
Anybody else? My personal opinion is, yes, technology is a good idea. I'm not sure now that, I think it ought to be, there's a few steps the council has to agree to create the thing. And if we do that, and then they don't create it, then we get another thing. And then, I'm not sure, I'd like to have Tim kind of give us a crystal ball of what's coming. I mean, we don't know whether we're gonna spend $2 million or $200,000, and it's a big difference, obviously. We just don't, there's too many unknowns in this area.
I think that idea is actually a really good one. I think Heather, you know, first of all, I think Tim would be elated right now that he has a fan, truly, that he's been asking, and I know the superintendent knows this too. I mean, he's been asking for this for a while. It's fallen off his radar, and I think it's fallen off his radar a little bit because, like everybody else in the room, like the chief said earlier, he's not even asking for certain stuff because he knows the bandwidth isn't there. I think the takeaway is the pies are still not big enough to do all that we need to, and we're really triaging this stuff. We're victims of our own success. But I think a presentation from Tim, we could probably set up. I've asked for it from him too, and maybe that would be the first step, is to lay out for us, for the finance committee, what's the next 5 years look like on technology? You know, I will say to Munis, we incorporate it into the operating budget. We have gotten some small amounts for some utility money in the past for Munis. But I like your curiosity around technology, because I am too. I think the superintendent is, and I think we could probably do a presentation. I think that's a really good first step, and maybe explain how a stabilization would work for him. I will say, if you put any money in it today, he'll spend it tomorrow. Which does go to Heather's point of the need, but then you're setting up an account to then drain it. I guarantee he'll spend it right away. Like, not because he's a spendaholic, but just because the need is gonna be there in some way or shape or form. There'll always be an emergency. And maybe we should get a better idea of what his long-term costs are. I really do agree with Heather on that.
I hate to make decisions without the facts. We don't know. And I realize he may not be able to predict it. I mean, the chiefs aren't gonna be able to predict the calls today. So, I mean, I just feel it's like this black hole, and I would like to put some light on the hole.
Yeah,
That's all.
I think it's a good idea.
And it could be a black hole that we'll be pouring money into.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to pour money
I
into.
don't think we've ever had him come in for a presentation.
We
have we?
haven't.
No.
We have, we did have it?
I know he stood here and told us all about,
It was last year's capital? Okay.
yeah, right? I remember him here,
But
yeah.
it's usually in the capital.
But did he do a PowerPoint or anything? I'm losing my
I
mind.
can't remember that.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's done a broad overview of what he does in his capital, and actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think we've done that with him in a really long time. That might be really helpful for the public and for all
I
of
think
you.
last year's capital, the schools were asking for a lot of their
The blackboards. Yep.
exact blackboards and all
View
that, so
boards,
he
whatever.
talked about that during that, and other things that he
Yeah.
does as well.
But I think he was just speaking to those items. I don't think he was speaking to what Ken or you or a variety of others says, like, well, what about Wi-Fi access points? What about fiber? What about Chromebooks? What's the broader picture? And I think that would be really, well, I've sold myself on it. So,
Plus, I would like a definition of technology. I mean, we're buying a gold-plated radio. It's technology. Is it not? It is tech, and especially in today's world, it's technology.
No, it definitely.
So what is the definition of technology? Should Tim be buying their radios and?
It actually says
I understand.
technology. George, it says right here, technology.
Awful lot of grumbling.
you got unanimous consent on that one.
So there was like a two-part to that. It sounds like I got shut down on part one of it, but, and actually got shut down on both of them, but,
Yeah.
More to come on the second part, though.
Yeah.
yeah, but I had mentioned, moving some money out of the property acquisition, like maybe 50 grand, and putting that towards the school's facilities project, just to give them the wiggle room that they currently need. If they have extra money from the moving services, obviously they're gonna use it, just like any other department would use it up really quick too. But why put the stress on everybody that's moving that day to make sure they lift their own boxes or whatever the rules are? I mean, why
They
not
don't
just
lift their
give
own
them
boxes.
50
No.
grand? No, I know they're not gonna
Oh,
lift their
okay.
own boxes,
Let's find out.
I'm just
if he-
saying, like you said, to follow the rules or whatever the
Yeah.
movers say, I'm just,
I think I know he
maybe
and
give them
Dr.
a
Dutch
break.
enough that he built the wiggle room in already.
I appreciate the advocacy. We put forth what we feel is an accurate request for what we need to complete that job. The points Jamie made earlier around don't change things. It's like when you change orders in the field after you've put together a full design. I think that's the idea. We've done this move when we built the new high school and moved, and it was successful. We've done this multiple times. I feel as though the money that's in there. So I appreciate the idea, but I do think the request that we put forth for you tonight were based on what we believe we need to continue to move the work forward at this time. And we hope that that builds some goodwill and credibility for when we come before you in the future, that we've tried to put in what we feel like we accurately need. So thank you.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay,
Can I just,
you wanna, oops.
Carrie has
Treasurer has it.
Sorry. Just, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to go back about stabilization funds, and those are mine, okay? They're for long-term investments. If we give technology a stabilization fund, and when Jamie just said he's gonna spend it, you're not gaining any interest. So,
Yeah.
you know,
the interest is.
so the free cash is used for capital. That is revenue, excess revenue. So that is like a savings, and it's used for technology items. It just depends on each department and what they're asking for, and we kind of analyze it. So based on Tim's presentation that he will love to do, maybe he's going to ask for more next year. So I just want you to understand what a stabilization fund
Yeah.
is for. And property acquisition, no, we're not going to buy land for 200,000, but in 3 years, if you're the fiscal policies that you all review, maybe you say 10% of free cash goes into that.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of, I just want to make sure you
Yeah, I remember you
understood.
talking about the budget stabilization account at, I think, the last meeting, and you were saying the amount of interest that was earned back was almost what was
Yeah.
given out. So certainly,
It depends.
yeah, I mean,
I had
obviously,
a-
it depends on interest rates and all
And
that stuff.
December is not looking good,
No, right, I'm sure.
so, but yes, that's what that's for.
Yeah, that
And they
makes
do, those funds earn a different rate than others.
Right.
So that's. just
Carrie
wanna
does
make
raise
sure.
a good point
Yeah.
that we have,
Thanks, Carrie.
while
Yeah.
these high yield interest rates are still available at even 3.95, we have been making, and we'll go through this later with local receipts, we have been making a fair amount of interest and a very large amount of revenue in our savings accounts.
No more discussion? Yes, no? So the vote comes on the original motion. On the movement of free cash money to the various stabilization accounts we just talked about. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. And we have another motion.
Yep, I'm making another motion, that the sum of $2,998,500 be appropriated from free cash, $210,000 be appropriated from water retained earnings, and $830,000 be appropriated from sewer retained earnings to be expended at the discretion of the town administrator for the FY 2025 capital improvement plan as outlined in the town memo, including any residual funds remaining in these line items.
Second.
Approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Recommendation on expenditure of the opioid settlement funds. What's next?
I get to dish the rock on this one to the deputy town administrator, Mr. Chairman. He's going to take it away.
Hello. So, yeah, I'll give a little overview of the memo and then answer any questions. So from calendar years 2022 to 2038, Franklin will be receiving about 1.7 million in opioid settlement funds. If you may recall, we opted into settlements with the Commonwealth, which combined will bring over 900 million to Massachusetts. And like I said, of that 900 million, approximately 1.7 will go to Franklin. So far, the town has received about 528,000 of these funds, and about 130,000 of them have been spent thus far. We were really waiting to get some direction from the Commonwealth on, you know, what these funds could be spent on, as well as the reporting requirements around them. So we now have all that information. They've set up a portal. Everything's online. People can go online and see what each town is receiving and what they're spending the funds on. So thus far, we've only spent about 130,000 of the 528 that we've received. and 67,000 went to the Safe Coalition, and then that was couple years ago, and then 35,000 went to the William James Interface Program 2 years ago, and then last year we allocated 28,000 again to the William James Interface Program, which is a program mainly the schools use, but it's open to everyone in the community to use. We have resources on our website if people are interested in that program. It's a mental health and wellness referral program. So, currently, we have about 400,000, really 397,000 to be allocated that have been in a fund just waiting to be allocated as we waited guidance from the Commonwealth. So we've worked with some of our stakeholders in town and in the area to kind of understand what the need is here in Franklin and, you know, really who's doing this work. As we know, the Safe Coalition does a tremendous amount of work with, you know, the opioid epidemic. So we are asking you to allow us to advocate approximately $200,000 to the Safe Coalition over the next 2 years, 85,000 to Gillies House, 56,000 to Art Pharmacy, and then another 56,000 to William James, which is a program we're already working with as well. And we have representatives from the Safe Coalition, Gillies House, and Our Pharmacy here tonight if there are questions, and I'm happy to answer questions on these programs as well. So that would kind of draw down on what we have in the fund currently, and then we should be receiving additional funds from year to year, which at the end of the memo shows what we're going to be getting each year until 2038, I believe it is. And that we're hoping, because we're using funds from our county ARPA funds to supplement our co-response program with the Franklin Police Department. So we're hoping that as we start getting those funds, we can use that to help offset some of the funds for the co-response program with the Franklin Police Department.
Is there any reporting by these organizations as to how many people from Franklin may actually be using it?
So, yeah, I think, so with Gillies House, in speaking with them, I did a tour of their facility and, you know, talked to them. They're actually here as well, and I'm sure they can talk to it. But currently, about 25% of their residents are Franklin residents. And I think they said from 2018 till now, it's been about 15%. And then so Art Pharmacy is a new program that is really been focused around mental health and loneliness. And we're looking to do a pilot here in Franklin to bring in substance use disorder into that. So with the 56,000 over the next 2 years, we really want to partner our arts and cultural programming here in town with individuals that, you know, might be looking to have a sober life and really want to kind of do some programming and just activities that don't involve, you know, substance use. So we're working with Art Pharmacy to try to figure out how that will work here. I'm working with Corey Shea, who's our Director of Arts and Culture, and trying to figure out, you know, the best way to do that. Not only for people that are sober now, but maybe as for prevention as well. We're working with the schools to see if we can get some of the counselors to be what they call prescribers. So instead of, you know, they can be on medicine and that as well, but also just prescribing activities, maybe going to see a play or doing a pottery class or some kind of arts and cultural activity. Kind of rounds out, you know, some, like the lifestyle of, you know, maybe going to counseling, but also living a life of sobriety, yeah. So.
Question? So we're gonna get 1.2 million remaining over the next however many years, and it looks like million of that will go to help fund the Franklin Police Department piece of things, right? Which I'm glad you put that in there, because I had that question of how that was still being funded. So that's great, because I personally love that program. So that leaves 200,000 for other programs over the other, however many years, 12 years? Is that right? Is that the right math? Like, we're gonna get 1.2 in, you're dedicating $1 million to that program, great, let's keep that going. 200,000 will be sprinkled over maybe some of the sampling of these programs over the next 12 years. So essentially, the investment on these current programs will go down.
Correct. So the money we have currently will be spent on the programs, the Art Pharmacy, Gillies House, Safe Coalition, and William James. That will draw down the funds we currently have. Then we'll be getting, it's approximately, over the next 15 years, $100,000. We only have a half a fiscal year for, I think it's 2027, the co-response team is paid for. So we would put, it's $144,000 towards that program for the remainder of the fiscal year. So we know that in fiscal year, fiscal year 28, we will have to start funding, just supplementing the
Yeah.
funding, which
No,
would be
and that makes sense.
$100,000.
I think if we're gonna get 1.2 in, $1 million goes to the current police department response team, great. We're currently funding these other ones pretty heavy. It's just, that's gonna drop off.
It will go away.
That will completely
Yep.
go away.
Yep.
Okay. How are we communicating this now, like this is available, because it is kind of a limited time, right? If you need help, we've got these great programs for probably 2 years, and then the well's gonna dry up. How are we what's the current communication to let our citizens know that this is available?
So, well, we want to have the funding allocated first, and then we'll contract with the individuals, these organizations.
Gotcha.
Then we'll be rolling out the programming for it. So Safe Coalition has to build out their programming
Okay.
for some of these activities, and same with Art Pharmacy, where William James is already existing and Gillies House is already existing. We're supplementing some of their capital costs and operational costs.
Got it.
But some of the programming, SAFE already has some programming in existence, but there are other programs where they see a need in the community, they want to make sure that they're filling that need and using this funding to do so. And then we'll be making sure that individuals in the community know about that. And these organizations also fundraise and do other activities, so the hope is that they can build up this program, and then if they're successful, they'll be doing
Continue with other
fundraising
means,
and
potentially.
there'll be other means to do
Yeah, I was
that.
gonna say, they understand that it's gonna stop.
Right, yeah, and that's all been communicated.
I would just say really quickly, I mean, we've funded through other revenue sources, like some of the cannabis money and some of the ARPA funds and other funding sources. I think those groups are gonna use that money over 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. I'm sure they'll promote a lot of the programs through their current channels. I think once the funding becomes available, we'll probably do some modest outreach. But we don't want to field all those calls necessarily, because somebody should just be contacting directly with Jen or Gillies. The Art Pharmacy is a little unique in how we're starting that, but it is a concern. Obviously, some of that will drop off, but the opioid settlement money will drop off as well.
Right.
And I think in the particular case of Safe Coalition, I think, as Jen well knows and everybody there, I mean, probably, I'm just taking a guess, Jen may actually know the dollar figure, I wouldn't be surprised right off the top of her head, but I think over the course of the last 6 years, we've probably given at least maybe $500,000, I'm guessing, maybe even more, to SAFE through various revenue sources. So, we're always here for them, we're gonna continue that. I don't think there's any more federal stimulus money coming, but you never know. The state is still gonna deal with this issue and pass money down through public health. I mean, I don't know how all that's together, but I think this is still a great thing for them for a couple of years to be able to use that money. Gillies House won't use it all at once. They're gonna wait for a Franklin resident to come in, maybe some of the capital costs, right, Amy? But, eventually the money's gonna go away anyway. So I think that those organizations, we still continue to work with them, and I'm sure they're gonna continue to fundraise and do other ways to try to fund this stuff. And as Jen well knows, things change. I mean,
Yes.
think
Yes.
6 years ago, right? I mean, social services changes with the demand of where we're seeing things, you know? I think
Yeah.
7 years ago, it was the opioid crisis. Now there's Narcan everywhere, but now we're seeing gambling. Now we're seeing different things. And I think in the safe situation in particular, art pharmacy as well, those dynamics are gonna continue to shift. By the time this money's spent, I bet there'll be a whole nother issue, I'm sure, that we're trying to work on together and all that stuff, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Narcan was not, you know, you couldn't get it through
Right.
your
Yeah, a lot has
Pharmacy.
changed.
provider.
Yeah.
Now
Even
they're
since
starting to allow that. so.
The last time that we received funding from the town of Franklin, even the state reporting that we do, you know, for us, oh, you don't listen up. So yes, Franklin has provided us with significant funding over the years. And for us, especially related to the abatement funds, it's really, really important for us to both honor what the state expectation is and then also what we can do for the residents here in town. So there are a huge amount of expectations on the research, the analysis. I think we have like an 11-page report that was given to you on what we did here in Franklin for Franklin residents on how that money can be spent. And we want to make sure that every dollar that is provided to us from Franklin, one, goes to Franklin residents, but then is really allocated in a way that can sustain support as the years go on. The entire idea of the abatement funds is to provide education and prevention so we don't get back into that crisis mentality where we have to get people into treatment as soon as possible. But the last time that we came up here, the 7 categories in which money can actually be spent didn't exist. It was 4 massive categories that we could actually fill pretty loosely, and now we can't, which is actually great from like a CFO auditing perspective. You know, we have to be really specific on how we spend this money, which is awesome. So there are 7 specific categories and how we can spend it. The money is tracked really, really closely. It's really serious to us because we know how impacted the opioid epidemic has been in Franklin, how our residents have been impacted, but also creating a serious sustainability plan, making sure that people have access to care, that they know where to go, that we have a multilingual staff, and really Franklin is one of 15 communities that we do the opioid abatement funds with, and one of 42 communities we work in. So we know the money, we know how to do it well, but to Jamie's point, it's always shifting and changing. And so we always try to be like really, really in sync with the state and with the town on how to make sure that the money that they share with us is really allocated efficiently and effectively, and also that that reporting looks good for the state, for the town. So I hope that kind of helps a little bit.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm just curious, do you get municipal donations from other, being the Franklin Finance Committee? Do you get something from Norfolk?
Oh,
Rentham?
yeah. All of those towns,
From the
yeah.
town.
So every single municipality is different in the way they run it. They have a town manager or just a select board. I mean, every municipality that we work with has a different style of expenditure, has a different reporting structure, has a different invoicing structure, but also has different needs. And that's why Dr. Stephanie Heath is here. She's a researcher, she's also a social worker, and so she really does a 90-day assessment of a community. We pull all public records, we work with the schools, we collect data points, and that's really how we create a better understanding about how that money can be spent. Different towns, we propose different opportunities, but because we do work in the jails and with the Y and we have all these partners, we're able to really fit the 7 categories of expenditure that the state wants, and this is what we do with all the other towns as well. So we're good at it, we know how to do it, we're serious about it, and we know there's not really a lot of wiggle room anymore, which we're actually kind of thankful for. So yeah, we work with about 15 other towns in their opioid funds.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Jamie, anything else?
Nope.
Thank you, ladies. It's been a long night, huh? This finally gets used. We're in that.
I don't know if there's a resolution in front of you. I was just,
For that.
was it in the
We're
packet?
gonna make one up.
There should be in the packet.
Well, hold on, listen, I didn't see what.
You guys put them out there? Yeah, I believe it. Just need a motion and a recommendation on the plan.
so-
That's just, by the way, just so everyone knows, it's just on the immediate money that we have in the account. We can't spend money, obviously, that we don't have yet.
I don't see that.
Okay, so it's the, let's see how much, so
You're gonna-
the remaining of between the 528 and the 130.
Amy's gonna look.
Makes it much easier, because it's so hard to read numbers. Thank you. Make a motion that the sum of $397,000 be appropriated as indicated on resolution 25-02, from the statewide opioid settlement fund for the stated purposes.
Second.
Questions, comments on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Not a chance. Thank you.
Nice job. Now everybody's favorite topic they were all coming for, hold harmless.
The whole-
Totally.
It's been up there since I came in here. It's
I get it. Oh, I just want to make one mention, Mr. Chairman, while the school staff are coming up. I think Bob and Jonna may give the presentation, but I put a State House News Service article in there just for reference. There is a very key piece of that article in which Senator President Spilka announced when she got reelected this year that they are going to fully fund Student Opportunity Act, which Franklin does not really get a lot out of that, for the next 2 years. But one of her legislative priorities this year is to establish a commission on school finance distribution formulas. I was fortunate enough to work in the State House for the Chair of Education in 2006 and saw firsthand how Chapter 70 gets distributed and how this works. They don't do this often. 2006, you're at a 20-year review of that formula, basically. That made Heather's suggestion of doing this presentation very timely and more critical. I know I've spoken of this before and put in every budget memo of my concerns about hold harmless. We're the second highest hold harmless community in Massachusetts, behind only the city of Boston. And I've joked at this meetings before about being friends with Mayor Wu, who I will see next week, I think, at the MMA conference. Congratulations on her third child. Boston's by far the highest. But this is a huge warning to the community about this presentation, because if they change the Chapter 70 formula and they rethink how they deal hold harmless, this is a huge, huge structural problem for the school district moving forward. Enormous. Thank you.
agreed.
Good evening, everyone.
Introduce yourself so we know.
Jana Melotti. I'm the interim school business administrator.
I'm Bob Dutch, the former interim business administrator.
We will be providing an overview on hold harmless per your request. The hold harmless provision in Chapter 70 funding guarantees that school districts will get at least the same amount of state aid as the year before, even if their foundation enrollment goes down. This protects them from losing funding compared to the previous year. The goal of this provision is to avoid sudden cuts in state funding for school districts, regardless of changes in enrollment or other factors that affect funding calculations. For example, for the FY 2025 Chapter 70 program in Massachusetts, a minimal aid was made to provide the hold harmless aid to 16 school districts. This adjustment guaranteed that all operating districts received at least the same amount of aid in FY 25 as they did in FY 24, plus a minimum of $30 for each student. That's the standard, but this year was actually $104 per student. However, we can't assume that we will continue to receive the $104 per pupil.
So we function on the assumption that you will be returning to the $30 per pupil. Chapter 78 is determined by calculating the foundation budget, which is the minimal amount of money the district needs to provide an adequate education to students based on enrollment, student demographic characteristics, grades, and programs. The target local contribution, which is the amount each community should contribute toward the foundation budget based on the community's wealth, including property levels and income levels, property values and income levels. And the state aid, which is the amount that the state pays to supplement the local contribution to achieve the foundation budget. And here you have a visual of the previous slide. You have your foundation budget, which is the minimum funding the district needs to provide an adequate education for students. Then you have the required local contribution, which is the amount each community should contribute toward the foundation budget based on the community's wealth. Once you subtract the foundation budget from the required local contribution, you get your true Chapter 78. And since we are a hold harmless community, our Chapter 78 is going to be the previous Chapter 78 plus $30 per pupil. Now, to get to your required net school spending, you would add your Chapter 78 and your required local contribution. And if you do not hit your required net school spending, then you open yourself up to sanctions from the state. That's pretty it. We are happy to answer any questions. That's a quick overview.
Yeah. So basically, it's $12 million that we're getting over and above what we need.
Exactly.
Are eligible
Yep.
for. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, we're eligible for it, that's why we get it, but,
No, we're held harmless.
right.
That doesn't mean we're eligible.
If we were not held harmless, we would get
$12,000
$12,000 less.
$12 million less, yeah.
The
But
required,
because we're held harmless, that makes us eligible to receive
correct,
that.
right,
So
but,
we
but
are,
if they change the
If they
formula
change
for
the
hold
formula.
harmless.
if they change the formula, right?
Yeah, if they
You talked
change,
about the
yeah,
likelihood
if
of
they
the formula
change the
changing.
formula, you would look at $17 million
Yeah, sorry.
instead of the
Just-
29.
Just hearing you. The only reason we're saying that while you were out, Jamie
Sorry,
mentioned.
and I
That's
apologize,
okay.
I'm at the
No,
tail
it's
end
okay.
of pneumonia.
It's
So
okay.
I'm sorry about this terrible cough. I've taken all the antibiotics, everything is over, it's just a disgusting
He
loud
just,
cough.
he just mentioned that they're creating a committee to review hold
The
harmless.
Department of Education.
No, in the State House News article that I clipped into the packet, I've warned the town about this for many years. Amy worked in the legislature for a long time too, and I worked on the Senate Education Committee when they did the formula rewrite in 2006, where they changed it to the aggregate wealth model based on land and actual median income. People take the formula as is, you get used to it, but when you have a massively, it created hold harmless in a situation for basically declining enrollment districts. At the time when I worked for Senator Antonioni, the city of Gardner was seeing a massive decline in enrollment. And this was a way to try to not penalize districts for something that wasn't their fault per se. Franklin actually was like a perfect storm because the growth spurt came in the 90s. You couldn't build schools fast enough. Everyone built the modulars here off of all the schools. They were those modular classrooms, and that was to deal with the growth spurt. And actually, Franklin saw a huge infusion of Chapter 78 because you had the enrollment, plus you had very, very cheap land at the time. And so they changed that, and I was saying earlier that Senator Spilka announced that when she got reelected as Senate President, she already announced that they're going to commit to the remaining 2 years of the Student Opportunity Act, which Franklin doesn't really benefit very much from. And she's gonna propose, in essence, when the Senate President proposes something, it's more likely than not that she'll get it, a Chapter 70 commission to look at the funding formula. And this could be very, very harmful to Franklin. If they redistribute how hold harmless gets calculated, it could be very, very difficult for Franklin to be able to sustain that. And we're gonna have to make up that revenue someday if if they change the formula, which would be several years down the road. But as I've articulated, one last point, as I articulated many times before, at many budget meetings for years, and I've written it in my budget narratives, the reason why I've warned people about this is because if you're a rep or a senator and you're seeing a huge enrollment increase, okay, you're working with your colleagues and you're saying, geez, we're funding $12 million to Franklin, and they haven't done their job to raise their tax levy and their operating budget to make up, let me finish, Heather. They have not done what they've needed to do over a long period of time to raise the tax levy to make that hold harmless number dwindle down. And so you get into legislative debates because those districts that see huge enrollment spikes, like a Hopkinton or a Needham, for example, those legislators say, hey, wait a minute, my district needs more money. And you have to just kind of work with wherever those lawmakers are in leadership. And those can be powerful places to go where those lawmakers are saying, why are we funding Boston, Franklin, and these declining enrollment districts when my community's suffering because we don't have enough money? So we're gonna do overrides in our community to fund education, even though the formula is not fair to those districts. It sets up a lot of legislative conflict. And I thought that the fact that the Senate President announced that she was gonna fight for a commission, which would take a couple of years to do its work, you know, I think is a very, very important feature this community has to realize in the next few years. You know, they could change the formula 2, 3, 4 years from now, which is very, very difficult. But if they change hold harmless, to Bob's point, it's $12 million that we were held harmless, but actually without that hold harmless provision, we'd have $12 million less in state aid, which would be very devastating to the district. Thank you, Heather. I appreciate that.
Sorry, so,
Thank me, what? You're
Well, I
saying-
just asked you to hold on for a second.
No, I
until was
didn't,
done
no,
with
no,
my-
no, this is a
I
hot
appreciate
topic,
it.
so it's a good one.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
sorry, so just moving back to this slide, can you talk a little bit about the three sections at the bottom, the FY '25 Chapter 70, the required local contribution, required net spending? Where has Franklin been relative to the required net school spending historically, or at least the last few years?
Franklin has historically been beyond the required net school spending, anywhere from 7-8% up to, I think, about 15%.
Okay.
Or about 13, above required net school spending.
How much of that is local contribution versus the Chapter 70?
Excuse me, I didn't.
Sorry. Okay, so the local contribution is what's the overage. I'm trying to think, I guess the question I'm trying to ask is if we're over the required net school spending, is that because we're doing really well with local contribution? Is it the excess Chapter 70, or is it a combination, or just, where's that coming from?
Required net school spending is a combination of what the school committee allocates as their expenditure, which obviously comes from the town as well. But also those things that are outside of our budget that the town assumes responsibility for, like facilities, like a lot of the expenses absorbed by the town. Those get calculated into the required net school spending, because it comes from the end of the year report that we submit to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And that's really the primary reason that we are as far above net school spending as we are.
Got it, so the Chapter 70 funds will go to both the school, but also the municipal side for the facilities that is covered by school, by the pieces covered by school. Is that how you think about it, or?
I mean, yeah, the town, the Chapter 70 aid comes to the town, and it's intended as the town as a pass-through.
Got it.
And in theory, all of the Chapter 70 aid is appropriated as part of the town's appropriation to the schools. So yes, it is all coming to the school indirectly.
Do we know what that number is that the town pays for?
We do.
And it is?
I don't know it off the top of my head.
A
I'd have
I'm
to-
sure you can have a good guess.
I'd have to look at the end of the year report to get a better idea. She's gonna pull it up for you.
Because,
It's in the millions.
yeah, I'm sure it is. That's facilities and DPW work and whatever else.
It's facilities, a lot of staff, staff salaries, the biggest part.
Insurance.
Insurance.
Workers' comp, unemployment, debt, interest, it's all sorts of stuff. I've had presentations on this before.
Reported at 19 million.
Yeah, I've had presentations and I've laid it all out before I have reports somewhere, but it's almost, you're looking at somewhere, depending on the year, like I said, 18 to 23 million. And it depends on what assumptions you make, the facility director, 75% of his time is used for this. So it's maintenance of lawns, it's property insurance, workers' comp, unemployment insurance. I mean, I could go down the list. It's
It
a
just
lot of
depends on
different stuff.
allocations essentially, so you can kind of.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Treasurer's accounts. Oh, somebody's got it. I guess it's kind of, I hate to say 20 million bucks is irrelevant, but it's, how do I say this? It's what we've been paying for
Yeah.
all of my life in some
Yeah,
form or other.
I think, we've had this conversation, and I've talked to Jamie about it. Franklin is unique in how they're structured and organized. In many communities, particularly, where I've been associated with, facilities are on the schools. That's part of their budget historically, so it would normally increase the budget. On the flip side, health insurance is rarely part of the school budget. It's usually on the town side. So could you call it a wash? Possibly. It's, I don't know what the actual facilities number is, but so the total number expended by the town was $27,050,000 last year for FY '24.
So a full, just slightly under a third of the school budget comes from the town anyway.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
like 30, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe like 25 to 30, like 20, a quarter. Or closer to a quarter, 25 to 30%.
And that's kind of historical average, or?
That's a little high.
Less.
I mean, but costs are going up on facilities. Inflation was a huge factor here with electricity, gas, propane, utilities, all that stuff.
Last
Cleaning
3
supplies.
years were 24.2 million, 25.2 million, and 27 million.
That's inflation, yeah, I'm sure.
That's been inflation for sure.
Would,
But every district has had the same issue, so it all gets calculated into the same issue.
so the other districts, even though it's in their budget, they get to take that, we put it in.
It's still
Do they take it out?
calculated in net school spending, it's
Right.
just not coming from the town contribution as far as an expense. Because the appropriation's still coming from the town, ultimately, it really doesn't matter.
I'm just amazed that this state that regulates everything doesn't specify where the money comes from. And it may be just robbing Peter to pay Paul and move it around, but at least you can compare apples and apples as opposed to,
Well, I think that's what net school spending does, is it compares apples to apples, because it's all aggregating everything together into what you're spending on for those categories.
Question? So we checked the box on required net school spending, and it sounds like we do it pretty well, somewhere you said between 8, 10, 15%. But highlighting the 12 million is great. I think that was a big takeaway for me on this and what I wanted. So say an override did pass and we wipe out our current, where are we, somewhere in the 4.5. It doesn't change the calculation, right? So an override passes, we fix the problem, 2 to, say, hopefully further down the road, 4 years down the road, they recalc this, and now all of a sudden we have a new $12 million. That's kind of just what we also need to take out of this is essentially we could be we're at a $16 million deficit if the hold harmless didn't exist.
Correct, and I guess
Like,
You may want to look at it kind of like you look at your OPEB trust. It's not anything that you are really going to be able to fund fully, 100%. And in reality, could you fully absorb that $12 million, or would there need to be some other solution that would result in reductions in some way?
Well,
You don't have those dollars.
I guess that's the next question, right? I mean, we knew about this home hard, I mean, the town has known about this since we've had it, Home Harmless, right? And we've been talking about it at almost every budget and joint budget and all the meetings. So, if it is on the table, and this senator is gonna do this, I would assume there would be some sort of a phased out approach, although I don't know.
I would assume.
I guess none of us know, like you say, crystal ball. But how the heck is Franklin
Gonna absorb the 12 million.
gonna be able to afford that?
I think we need a
What's the
committee.
answer? How could there be an answer? We don't have any
Yeah.
money, we barely
I
have.
mean, like,
This is
it's
10
unlike,
grand
so
to start the cultural council.
practically speaking, it's unlikely for them to take chapter 70 from 12 million to 0.
Right.
But it is likely that there is going to be a change, and to your
Yeah.
point, it may be over time, it may be graduated. I think the bottom line means, is, again, to your point, we are aware of it, and Jamie would probably say he's been shouting it from the rooftops, and we need to start preparing for that, because it could happen.
Based on the numbers we've been seeing though, how would we ever prepare for that?
You're gonna have to start talking about it.
Right. The only way to prepare, is,
We already know the school budget's coming in at a deficit this
We
year.
know.
We're coming in at like
We-
4 or 5 million deficit.
we know.
So how can we
The-
possibly come up with
This
another?
is another situation where I think the people in this room know, the people online probably know, but the town in general, I think, does not. So that's where I think the gap is that we need to close.
Yeah, and it's very hard, obviously, to talk to the public about this. It's complicated,
Yeah.
right? But I think keeping it simple, I think at the end of the day, there's gonna be a multi-tiered reasons why, we've gotta try to chip away at this problem. I still go back to Susan Rohrbach, who spoke at a hearing last year, who was a former school committee member, and I've said this and put her on slides. Probably down the road, the town is gonna have to do like what you do is like, school-specific, small, under $1 million type overrides to try to chip away at this. What you wanna show between now and if they ever change this in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, is to show that you're trying, right? And that you're successful in chipping away at this. The worst thing you could do is show no effort, not try. And I will say the redistricting analysis that's being done is a huge advantage. Boston, as you saw, who has the highest hold harmless, just closed 3 schools after years and years and years of kicking the can down the road. And if we're trying to do, those types of tax increases, I think the smaller ones on specific issues like restoring AP or whatever will put a lot of good faith forward. What you want to do is give your state senator and state rep in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years the ammunition and the narrative to say, hey, we had this huge peak and valley that was just a very unique circumstance, which is completely legit. And Senator Spilka was our senator for 20 years. She knows all about this in Franklin. She has spoken at hearings in Franklin. We've been with her. Steve knows, I appreciate it. I mean, we had the school committee sponsored forums. Senator Spilka was very clear with the public on this. So not only is she in a unique position as president, but she actually knows Franklin very well. And what we want to show her, the legislature, is give our lawmakers the ability to say, we've been chipping away at this, it's on our radar, but to Ken's point, please don't go from 12 million to 0 or 12 to 6, because then you really are in an emergency situation where you're going to have to really plunk down and say, okay, what it is. I do believe an override in any amount for the district will chip away at that. So even if it was a $3 million number, Ken, it wouldn't go automatically from 12 to 9, but it would calculate that the required local contribution and that our share is going up on a Franklin level, and that's a good thing, and I think we want to continue that. And we obviously want to continue that without jeopardizing other municipal services. Because once we decide, well, we want to, do this on the back of a shift of police officers, we don't want that. But then we've also now created another bigger problem with the public safety related issues. So I think, this is a unique situation. I think the fact that Senator Spilka said this already gives us a kind of window of few years to get ready for this. That's a good thing. And this is a very hard topic to talk about with the public, but we do need to increase our local contribution to be able to chip away at that hold harmless number. And I think Mayor Wu is doing the same thing challengingly right now in Boston, trying to put those good feet forward, knowing she's going to be in the hardest position if she's still mayor. Whoever is mayor of Boston is going to be in a very, very challenging position down the road. And that's why I joke she's one of my best friends, because we need her on Beacon Hill, or whoever the mayor of Boston is. We need them to be with us, and we need to be with them to make sure the legislature doesn't really decimate this unique demographic situation for us, but also a lot of other districts right now who are seeing huge enrollment declines too. For a while, there was like a few cities and towns that kind of had that problem, but as we see enrollment decline district after district after district, this is going to be a problem the legislature is going to have to deal with at some point.
216 districts this past year had a
That's-
decline in enrollment.
Wow. Out of how many? 300?
365.
Well,
That's 2/3 of the districts in the state are declining enrollment.
So she talks about, in the article, take a look at the formula. It can't not just the hold harmless formula, right?
No.
She's talking
No,
about
the
the full
whole
state
foundation
funding,
budget.
the
all of
entire
seven.
thing.
Yeah.
So I wonder, and I don't know if you guys have heard anything about this, but oftentimes we talk about out-of-district special education
Yeah.
costs, transportation costs. Would that be part of the formula that she might take a look at as well?
It's possible, not transportation,
Yeah.
but
Right,
it
probably
could be special ed costs. I mean, they've already made adjustments to, it's an aggregator, it's a multiplier on special ed costs, both in district and out of district, as well as ELL students. So there's a base rate at the foundation for a traditional elementary, middle, and high school student. There are then escalators or multipliers for these other categories. So they could play around with that. You're also looking, the only driver that we have any control over, and we don't really have control, is enrollment. Everything else is of economic value. So wage adjustment factor, inflation, property wealth, municipal revenue growth factor, those are all things that are outside of our control.
Yeah.
But how they implement those figures into the formula may be what you see change to make it more equitable.
Right, so
Right.
hopefully, to make it more equitable, could throw out that if they said, okay, we're not gonna give you this extra 12 million anymore, but we'll absorb your out-of-district costs. Well, that's 10 million. So it's not that big of a hit. You have to wait and kind of hear the whole thing. Not saying that we don't need to prepare for the worst, always you should, but you also need to see that there's a bigger picture of what they're gonna look at when it comes to reform. It's
There-
not just the one piece.
I think to Jamie's point, though, it's important that we narrow the
The
difference between our required local contribution and our net school spending, so that a larger portion of it is coming from our local contribution. I know you had mentioned required net school spending and, that we were doing reasonably well. I think there are a few communities that are below required net school spending, Fall Rivers and New Bedfords of the world. And then there are the other extremes that are at 45% above required net school spending. The Wellesleys, Westons, Old Rochesters, those Marions, those communities. So, we're kind of in the middle of the pack. We're doing okay. We're spending more than we're required to. But we're not where Westwood is, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I have a question, a crystal ball question, okay? Is there any chance they would just change the whole philosophy of funding schools, period? And I'll throw out something crazy. Add 2% to the income tax and pay it at the state level. Give you, or, hey, they
So
did it.
everybody pays more than 2%?
Well, they get, you know what I mean, they did it for the millionaire's tax. Well, that yielded money that I'm not sure anybody ever saw. It got spent, but where did it go? You know what I'm saying? And
I do.
how does, I don't know, New Hampshire fund their schools without even a sales tax or an income tax? The money comes from somewhere. There's
Well,
gotta
our
be
schools
some-
are a lot better, so we spend a lot more money on them for good reason. It's our version of corn in Nebraska and cheese in Wisconsin. Like, education's what we do. And public education, in my view, is literally the brand of the state. And and Bob was probably, when the ed reform happened in 1993, that was probably one of the best things that's ever happened to public education. Chapter 70 is the best thing that's ever happened to public education probably ever. It's infused an untold billions of dollars into public schools. The other issue on the table is going to be charter school reimbursements. There's a whole series of issues. George, I will say, on the one hand, as somebody who's not afraid of change, I would love to see the formula be a lot more simple, straightforward, and be in a way that people can have better predictability. The Student Opportunity Act was a mini reform where it really went to dealt with underperforming schools. Not arguing against that, but to Bob's point earlier, the Marions, Westwoods, Wellesleys weren't really big beneficiaries from that. And rightfully so. There were struggling districts that needed an infusion of funds for a variety of reasons. No one knows public education funding better than Senator Spilka. She was on the school committee all the way to the Senate president, and she's led the charge on public education finance for many years. I think given post-pandemic and what all is going on, it's a great question. I don't know where this is going to go, but I will say this, and I think Bob will agree with me. You can't get legislation through unless everybody wins. It's very, very hard, and that's what I learned in '06. That's how Hold Harmless kind of came to fruition, was these donut hole districts that were seeing, the formula wasn't going to work out for them. Well, then you got to figure out ways to triage those lawmakers. This is very complicated stuff legislatively. The town of Sandwich led the charge in '06 because they were land rich, but they were a middle class community. And they had a group called Fair Share for Sandwich, which, kind of went around almost on the state themselves and said, we need to change this. And there was a lot of political will to do it. The Senate president at the time was from Plymouth, so they did it. But then you win 200, say you get, 140 lawmakers on board with a good idea. Well, then you got to deal with the other 60 or 80 or whatever that aren't making money, and you got to figure out ways to triage that. So it's a very complicated process. The millionaire's tax, the surtax, has been in the news all the time. They've got, the governor just put out a bill yesterday, essentially investing almost a majority of the excess surtax money into the MBTA. And I'll be making a pitch next week at the MMA meeting to a lot of folks saying, hey, the MBTA is important, but is that system ready for that infusion of money? But right now, we've got 108 overrides the last, teachers getting laid off in almost every district. I mean, I think there was probably over 1,000 teachers laid off across Massachusetts last year. I bet you that's going to happen again this year. At some point, the legislature has to step in and help us out on this stuff, because you cannot override your way out of this. So I would love to see them kind of blow up the formula, if you will, but then that's a risky political proposition too. But I think she's ahead of this. I think this is going to take a few years to kind of get out there in the public. They'll have 1 million hearings. I'm sure Amy and I will be there in the front row talking about this and listening to what's going on, because we have a huge stake in the game. But we'll see what happens. But I think at least we know, in a few years, this is a possibility that we're going to be looking at a reality that we're going to have to get our local contribution up. And this is a very similar thing that happened in Needham some decades ago as their growth spurt leveled off, right? Our population here has just gotten flat. I know people don't feel that because everyone hates all the building that's going on in town, but it's really not generating a huge population increase at all. And so we've basically flattened out, and now it's time, like we've been talking about for 6-7 years, we got to take care of our own. We've got to figure out ways to kind of chip away at this. So, you know, it's an issue we're going to continue to talk about for sure.
One more just crazy question. They talk about how much can Franklin afford to contribute? And they list those things. What in heaven's name is property wealth?
Value of all of your property.
Yeah. That's why if you look at the Chapter 70 formula,
That's not wealth.
if you look at the Chapter 70 formula, and I maybe need to stand corrected a little bit because I haven't looked at the numbers in a really long time. I bet you Lawrence and Holyoke and a handful of those communities probably get 95% of their aid for their districts through the Chapter 70 formula.
I think it's 80.
80? Okay, so it's still there at the tops. And then the Westons and Wellesleys and others are at the bottom list because they have both aggregate land value wealth, like Newton and Wellesley and Belmont, Brookline, and et cetera. Milton, you know, name your community, I guess, you know, third of Massachusetts. And then you've got, those communities also have a high median income, right? This was the argument Sandwich made in 2004, 5, and 6 was, you know, we have a middle class median income, which seemed weird, but I think you remember that, Bob, the fair share for Sandwich stuff. You might have been born at the time.
Yeah.
Were you?
Yeah.
Were you born? Okay. And so, right? And so they were like, hey, we're land rich because we're on the Cape, we're over the bridge. You know, our property values are huge, but our median income was lower than other communities. And they did a very good job trying to bring that equity together. But in terms of property wealth, that's your total valuation of your property values in Franklin. As our property value, this is actually a topical conversation that we've had about development in Franklin. We got blitzed with a lot of emails last night telling the council and everyone, don't build another house, don't build anything more. Well, that's gonna make you actually, your property is gonna become in higher demand and it's gonna go up. So I started here 10 years ago and the average property in Franklin was around 350,000. Median valuation. It's over 650 now. By the end of the decade, your average value in Franklin's gonna be $1 million for a Cape. That property wealth part, George, is gonna make our formula continue to decline because we have what's called our ability to pay. And that's the conversation we've been going through. And we're in a demographic crossroads. You have a lot of people who've lived in Franklin their whole lives, without mentioning names, right? Who are on fixed or median incomes, but you have a lot of people now overpaying to come into Franklin who have a higher median income. They have a higher ability to pay. And that's going to be a detriment to us as we become a wealthier community. And that's just natural demographic changes. As things move west out of Boston and people can't afford Brookline, they're going to move here. Eventually they won't be able to afford living here, and they'll move to Millbury, and then they'll be in Wilbraham, and then it'll just go right down the pike, right down 290, you know, in other places. So that's another part of this that is not in our advantage, and why the tax levy is so important to address, because as we become a wealthier community, and some people don't want to admit that, as we become a wealthier community, our contribution and what we're going to get for the state is going to go down, unless we solve our own problem, like the Wellesleys, who are 45% over there, right? OPEB and Wellesley, they did an override just for OPEB to fully fund their OPEB, because that's how Wellesley rolls. We can't do that here, at least yet, so.
I guess just get frustrated, because I've struck up a relationship with the chairman of the Finance Committee in Milford.
Mm-hmm.
You know how much Milford gets for Chapter 70, right?
Yeah.
$45 million. That's 50% bigger than what we get.
That's right.
And they're very similar. Now, they have their downtown neighborhoods and all that stuff that we don't have.
Right.
But
their land values and median income and their aggregate wealth are still far lower than us.
I guess, all right.
No, it's like,
Yeah,
not,
I
it's just the
understand how they get there.
It's
It's
literally the
just very
truth. I know, it's hard, and this is why it gets hard, because you don't always compare things like that, right? You don't, but in the formulas, Bob and Jonna know, you know, the people at DESI are not sitting around going, well, you live down the street and, you know, some friends of yours are the same income. Like, they're looking at just they're just doing numbers. Right, Bob? They're just, John, they're just going through a metric number calculation. They're not looking at it from on the ground. That's not their job, you know? That's where all of you and everybody else come in about how we're gonna deal with this issue. In Franklin, we gotta figure it out on the ground, how we're gonna deal with it.
It
Do you
being
have-
9:26,
Oh.
any other things, comments?
I was just gonna ask a quick question about, you mentioned there was 180 something odd overrides this past year, is that right?
I think it was 108.
Okay, 108.
In the last,
Oh,
like,
eight.
in the
Okay,
last,
fine.
like, year and a half to 2 years.
Is there, and you could just point me in this direction, is there data somewhere that shows the purpose of each of those overrides? Yeah.
If you just Google Massachusetts
You could just figure it
overrides,
out there.
DOR,
Yeah, I've
Department of
done it.
Revenue,
There's a website.
there's a whole database
I'm
of
just
all
thinking
that.
if it's, I mean, you hear about it everywhere. A lot of it is around education and funding schools. I'm guessing that might be what's driving this Senate president to start thinking about this. The cities and towns, nobody can afford, and nobody wants to do an override, and, you know, it's this, that, because so many of the 108, how many were declined or didn't win, right? I'll get all of that from that
From the
Google
DOR,
search.
yeah. I haven't looked at it.
So, I don't know, I think it's a great thing. I think it's great that they're gonna look at the formula. I think they should. It's,
We hope it's great.
well, I do. I mean, they're not just gonna look at one piece of it. They're gonna look at the formula.
I would hope so.
It's gonna be the whole thing, and hopefully, I would like to see a lot of the out-of-district stuff
Yeah.
absorbed by some central budget somehow. I don't know how that's done, but
Okay.
that would be to the benefit
The
of all
state's
the
supposed to
towns.
fund it, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
We got 2 items left that I think, department expense records to date. It wasn't in tonight's packet,
Thank
it
you
was
for that.
somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob,
Thank you.
Jenna.
Bob, didn't you retire? Just
He loves this stuff. He can't go away yet.
Yeah.
How long a ride is it home?
You can't walk away from us.
All right. If anybody has any questions, I don't think we do. And the listening tool was laid out pretty clearly in lots of places. I intend to be at every one of them. We run into that crazy problem of if, you know, there's 4 of us on, Lauren, me, whatever her name is, Natalie. And
I'm Natalie.
I'm getting old, I don't remember.
It's fine.
So, you know, no one can make comments at it, unfortunately. Is there anything else?
On actually those listening things, maybe it would be helpful, this is just me, I'll say it here, because I know it gets tricky when we reply all, but it's fine to, like, communicate that within our group, right? Obviously, like, we can just be like, hey, I'm not gonna be there, so then that way Heather knows she can go and talk.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just as long as there's 4 members.
If
All 3 of us
someone's
are
not
there,
gonna
then-
be there?
Only if one person's
Is
not
it gonna
there.
be crazy times? It's a
gonna be
Saturday
there.
morning. Then
At night, there's daytime.
There's 4 nights in a day. in a
Yeah, so
Saturday.
maybe as the dates come up, we can just email if we're gonna be there, so people know.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you, everyone.